In a world destroyed by the apocalypse filled with monsters and danger everywhere, this guy awakens a completely bizarre power. While everyone else gains incredible abilities to fight, he gets stronger because of cockroaches. That's right, cockroaches. At first it seems useless, but the more he comes into contact with these creatures, the more insane buffs he gains, becoming stronger in a way no one understands. And while others struggle just to survive, he starts evolving using something everyone despises. In a world where only the strong survive, maybe the most disgusting power is actually the most broken. Alright, let's get into the video. The story begins with the protagonist panting heavily as he carries pieces of monsters, and a voice tells everyone to pay attention, because if they do not finish moving everything before sunset, no one will eat dinner. Some people collapse from exhaustion, and a man kicks them, saying that if they are still breathing, they should get up and keep moving. The protagonist is completely worn out, and as the man walks past him, he calls Joe Yi useless, and asks what the hell he is doing there, ordering him to move. Joe answers that he will. The protagonist's name is Joe Yi, just an ordinary guy trying to survive in this apocalypse. In the year 2026, the world faced a crisis beyond human comprehension. Giant insects emerged from underground and countless portals to other worlds appeared. People started calling them abysses. Inside those abysses were monsters straight out of a nightmare, like something from an extreme dungeon in a game. But the abyss also released a mysterious radiation, and a handful of people gained incredible powers from it, becoming known as awakeners. For those who did not awaken, if they wanted to eat, they had to do the dirtiest and hardest jobs. People load the monster parts onto the truck and collapse to the ground from exhaustion after doing so, Joe among them. Suddenly he is slapped across the face. The captain, furious, asked what the hell he thinks he is doing, and if he is wasting time pretending to be a victim. Joe, holding his bruised face, asks if his face hurt the captain's hand. The captain calls him a real pain and asks if he can still work, because if not, he can leave. Even tired, Yi answers that he can. The captain says those corpses need to be removed before nightfall and there will be no food if they do not finish. Joe replies not to worry, that he will get it done. Suddenly the pressure in the air grows intense, and Joe wonders what that was. Was it an earthquake? Ahead, a giant insect is still alive. Yi stares in shock, and the captain says there is one still alive. Everyone starts screaming and running. The captain spots Joe running and heads toward him, thinking running will not save them. He grits his teeth as he runs after him and shoots him in the leg. Yi realizes it and looks back. The captain is holding a pistol. He just shot his leg. The protagonist falls to the ground screaming in pain while the captain runs off laughing, saying that is what the weak are for, to be bait. Joe, lying on the ground, realizes now the captain left him behind as bait so the others could escape. He just wanted to survive and wonders why it is so hard. Someone like him, weak and powerless, was doomed from the start. Yi closes his eyes as tears fall. Then a small insect crawls onto his hand and he says that in a world like this, maybe only cockroaches have it easy. They can eat anything while he struggles every day just to find food. They are practically immortal. Not even abyssal radiation could wipe them out. If there is a next life, being a cockroach would not be so bad. Then multiple notifications appear. Human transformation initiated. Evolution system activated. First reconstruction attempt failed. Second reconstruction attempt failed. Third attempt failed. And after 1,599,999 reconstructions, success. Joe wonders if it is done. He raises his hand and what he sees is not human. There is a mirror nearby, and when he looks at it, he realizes he has turned into a cockroach and panics. He asks if that is really him, if he truly turned into a cockroach, and if he now has 2 extra arms. They seem like they have always been there. Not even strange. The only odd thing is the muscle on his back. Joe wonders what is happening and tells it to stop, until he collapses and notices that when he tenses the muscles on his back, his wings move on their own. If he had known wishes before transformation were so powerful, he would have asked for something better. A voice calls him an ungrateful human and asks how he dares mock the blessing of the cockroach god, saying that in 5,000 years, he is the first human to pray for its power, and it was about to give him the strongest abilities, now asking if he regrets it. The protagonist thinks those online novels were not lying after all and calls it father, asking it to wait and forgive him, taking back what he said. The insect beside him stares and disappears. The system notifies shutdown, the cockroach god does not like him, and Joe thinks he just activated his cheat code. Over the next 10 days, Yi tries to summon it again, but realizes no matter what he does, the system does not return. The cockroaches around him ask what he is doing, and he realizes at least now he can understand their language. On the first night, Joe thinks that joking about becoming a cockroach was one thing, but actually being one is disgusting. He looks around and realizes his companions, the other cockroaches, are even worse. Nearby, some cockroaches are eating, and one notices him and rushes over, telling him to eat while it's fresh because there are some newly dropped feces there. Yi yells for it to stay away from him, but the cockroach insists, saying he shouldn't be shy, that it likes his sauce and he can have that piece. The protagonist strikes it and says he told it to stay away. The cockroach falls to the ground and says, "That hurt." Joe apologizes and says its breath smells like poop, asking if it could finish somewhere else before talking again. On the fifth night, Yi lies on the ground thinking, damn genetics. Even poop is starting to smell good. He needs to find food soon or he might actually sleepwalk into a pile of dung. Sealed plastic prevents normal cockroaches from smelling food, but not him. Based on his human knowledge, there should be something edible in that trash heap, and he wonders if it's only 3 years expired. The system notifies that it found an expired egg tart, approximately 385 edible calories. The protagonist finds it disgusting that it's 3 years old, but Joe, even with his head down, goes to the tart and starts eating, saying it smells amazing, that humans couldn't eat it, but for a cockroach, it's a feast, exactly what he truly wanted. On the 10th night, the cockroach god still hasn't returned. Yi thought becoming a cockroach would make the apocalypse easier, but reality hit hard. He is miserable and even considered ending it all, but as a cockroach, he can't die from falling, drowning, or even poison. His only option is to find a predator to eat him. Yi says it's too painful, just imagining it makes him tremble, and he decides to keep living. Fortunately, cockroaches are social insects, so if he can dominate a colony and become king, he'll have a better chance to survive. The protagonist thinks who needs a system when with his human intelligence he'll prosper anyway, then looks at a fat one nearby and says he sees potential in him, asking if he wants to form a team. The fat one replies that he can't even grab fresh poop. Joe thinks that in this world power isn't about living comfortably, it's about being seen as someone who thrives, and he just needs a chance to prove his worth. On his 20th day as a cockroach, that chance finally comes. A voice says that from today they will move to a better place to feed, and whoever wants can follow or stay there, waiting for predators to eat them. The fat one, with tears in his eyes, asks if the poop ran out, and Yi thinks he swears these are the worst cockroaches he has ever led. The fat one shouts that he's scared to leave, and Yi tells him to shut up, wondering why everyone looks terrified and if cockroaches are really that lazy. The big one asks if anyone will volunteer to scout ahead and tells them to stop staring at the ground. All the cockroaches look miserable, and the protagonist thinks to hell with these insects. He doesn't even need their poop to survive. The system notifies that the cockroach god says if he accepts this mission, he may forgive him. Joe raises his hand and says he volunteers to lead the attack. The fat one says he's really brave, and Yi smiles, thinking his cheat code is back. They head to another place, and the protagonist asks if they just have to cross that barrier, saying it looks easy. The fat one asks if he knows what that is and says that every time food runs out, the big cockroaches send the small ones to explore new places, asking if he knows what's out there, saying it's an all-you-can-eat buffet for predators. He warns that they can't afford to die. Joe is startled and asks if this is a suicide mission, wondering if the cockroach god is mocking him, sending him to die as a sacrifice, and says he needs to back off, asking to wait, that there's another way to find food. The fat one is crying a lot and someone appears behind them. It's the cockroach god who asks where he thinks he's going, saying that beyond that barrier there are monster corpses waiting to be eaten, and whoever gets there first will be served. Yi wonders if cockroaches evolved to eat interdimensional monsters and says he's on a diet and they can go ahead. The cockroach god stares at him and makes a move, choking him and saying that if he doesn't want to explore, then the brats will come for dinner. The protagonist thinks that even as insects, they still can't escape survival of the fittest. When he was human, his team was sent to hunt for food because they were weak. No one was irreplaceable. The cockroach god says that searching for food is a privilege and that they should thank him for giving them a chance to survive. Joe is thrown to the ground and the cockroach god steps on him. Yi trembles all over and thinks he needs to get his cheat code back. Being able to eat anything is not enough. He needs to become stronger. Later, somewhere else, the cockroaches keep walking across the area and the protagonist tells his brothers to spread out and move forward, and if anything happens to alert the group. Joe pushes his partner's hand away, telling him to stop clinging to him, and the fat one says he is scared. They stop and look ahead, and Yi wonders if that place is near a river and why there are wave barriers there. The bigger cockroach says they are halfway through and nothing has happened, and the cockroach god says they can't let those brats take all the good stuff, that they will fly over it, and if there is danger, the little ones will be eaten first. The protagonist says that they fly so well and still made them scouts, calling them cowards. The fat one looks back and sees the eye of some kind of beast. Joe freezes as he realizes that the rocks they thought were stones are actually camouflaged frogs waiting for prey to fall right into their trap. The fat one starts crying. The frog opens its huge mouth, stretching out its tongue. They panic and try to run, but the frog, with its enormous tongue, catches several of them and devours them. The system notifies that a predator has been detected and starts analyzing biological data. Mutant frog, amphibian species, possesses powerful hind legs capable of jumping 20 times its body length. Tongue extends at 4 meters per second, coated with barbed teeth covered by paralyzing mucus, and its weakness is being unable to see motionless prey. The fat one thinks he is about to die and wonders what to do, and the protagonist says for them to stay still because the creature can't see anything that doesn't move or breathe. Then, the cockroach god is summoned and grants a choice. One option is to follow the safe route and escape alive. The other is to save a fellow cockroach and gain the first loyal follower on the path to becoming king of the cockroaches. Joe wonders how he can become king if he is about to be finished, and thinks that the choice is obvious. Yi looks back and sees his partner crying in despair, truly terrified, and remembers now that at that time, the thing he most wished for, the thing he never dared to dream, wasn't to become a cockroach but for someone to turn back and save him. Even in the apocalypse, even when the end was certain, he still longed for someone to save them. The protagonist pulls the fat one and starts flying, telling him to stop eating so much poop, that he is going on a diet from now on. The fat one smiles wide and says he loves him, and Joe tells him to shut up, saying his breathing is distracting. Then they notice something. They're about to fall into a frog's mouth. Yi looks to the side and throws his partner away. The fat one calls out to him, and the protagonist is devoured by the frog. The system notifies that he passed the cockroach god's test, that his altruistic spirit moved the god, system access has been restored, and a new trait has been unlocked: Devour all things. Trait activated: Devour all things. New abilities acquired: Sticky tongue and acidic mucus, absorbed from the mutant frog. Then the frog explodes, and more notifications appear about a special reward. A human foot begins to emerge from green slime, and Joe regains his human body. The sealed body has been unlocked, and Yi becomes excited. The cockroach god says that even in difficult situations, he maintained his integrity, proving himself worthy to be his successor. The protagonist asks about being a successor and wonders if that means he no longer has to be a cockroach. The cockroach god replies that a cockroach is weak, and weak means indestructible, then asks if he is indestructible. So why worry about the form he takes? Joe says he was terrible at Chinese in school and asks if he can explain it more simply. The cockroach god, annoyed, says it means he can keep his human form while possessing the power of immortality. Yi says that means no more being a cockroach. And the cockroach god says few humans have ever shown compassion for insects, but he saved his companion, which is admirable. The protagonist looks down at his foot and feels something strange, realizing he has crushed the fat one. The cockroach god says he just stepped on the companion he saved. Joe thinks he became human again because he saved the fat one, and wonders if now that he crushed him, the system will turn him back into a cockroach, realizing his survival depends on his acting skills now. The cockroach god asks how he could be dumb enough to choose him. Yi starts crying while holding the fat one in his hand, asking how he will survive this, saying he raised the chubby guy himself, fed him poop until he got fat and now lost him. That fate is mocking him, begging fate to take him too, asking how he is supposed to live. The cockroach god watches and thinks their bond is deep. Maybe he judged wrong and tells him to stop crying, saying the fat one has not lost his life and, to be precise, he cannot be finished. As his guardian, as long as the king lives, he will revive endlessly. All it takes is to eliminate a few mutant monsters to recharge energy, and he will return to life. The protagonist thinks he was going to spare the frogs, but now that is impossible, and today he will make sure they all remember the terror of being dominated by a human. Then a frog jumps on his body, hitting him, and Joe asks if it thinks it is Commander Levy fighting giants. The cockroach god warns him to be careful because that mutant frog is dangerous. Yi looks at his own hands covered in corrosive mucus and starts screaming. The frog watches his naked body, thinking he's a small caterpillar, and then shoots its tongue, hitting him between the legs. The protagonist screams and grabs the frog, saying he cannot even beat a simple mutant frog. The cockroach god replies that of course he cannot, because the frog is using his abilities to fight while he just flails around. Joe asks about his abilities, and the cockroach god explains that the trait he gave him is called Devour all things, and that he can eat anything to gain immunity, and if he devours everything, he will ascend to godhood. Yi thinks that is cool and asks if he can cook first. The cockroach god stuffs the frog into his mouth and tells him to eat it raw. Yi desired power, but the moment his tongue touched the frog, more than 10,000 taste buds screamed in agony. It was revolting. The protagonist vomits and says he cannot do it, and the cockroach god says that if he does not, he will lose his life, as he is already surrounded. Several frogs approach, and Joe, desperate, asks to wait and wonders why he is even complaining, since before he worked himself to death and could not even eat, and now food is literally being served to his mouth, questioning why he is still whining. Yi devours the frog, and the system notifies that Devour all things has been activated, detecting creature traits. Trait acquired. Corrosive mucus. Trait acquired. frog jump, and elastic muscles. The protagonist leaps and says their tricks are useless now, it is his turn. Joe starts striking the frogs with his abilities easily until a very bright light is emitted. Yi covers his face with his hand and a voice says they found a naked weirdo doing unspeakable things with frogs. The protagonist looks and realizes it is the extermination squad. He had heard of them in his past life. They are the strongest resistance force of humanity in this apocalypse. Each member is an elite awakener, hunting monsters on the surface and in the depths of the abysses, tracking new ones in real time and maintaining order around the cities. It is said that people living under their protection have already returned to a peaceful life before the disaster. If you met a patrol here, that must mean something, and he asks if they are there to rescue him. Then Joe is hit across the body with a sedative and falls to the ground. The team says the target has been confirmed and they can prepare the capture. Yi raises his hand and says to wait. The protagonist gets up and the system notifies that elastic muscles have been activated, allowing him to freely control every muscle in his body, dodging attacks with agility. The pressure grows more intense, and one of them says the target is dangerous. Everyone must get into combat position. Joe says to wait and hold on, that he is not a bad guy and they should let him explain. The men are told to aim until someone shouts to stop, and the captain says to capture him alive. Yi asks if these people cannot understand human speech, until motorcycles approach with riders on them, circling the protagonist with ropes in hand. They throw the ropes, pulling him by both feet, both hands, and his head. Joe shouts and struggles to break free. Looking to the side, the corrosive mucus activates, secreting a highly corrosive fluid on the surface of his skin. The captain observes as Yi manages to break free, making the riders fall. The captain smiles and asks if he is also an awakener. The warriors chase after him, shouting not to let him escape until one grabs him by the waist, but the protagonist slips out. The warrior's hand starts releasing mucus, and he says that is interesting, until someone moves quickly, jumping near Joe. But even so, Yi runs even faster. The warrior tries to hit him by any means, but the protagonist dodges and wonders where his cheat code is, and the system activates trait, frog jump. Joe thinks that was a success and keeps running, asking if they think they can catch him until he feels something wrap around his ankle. It is the captain, asking if he really thinks he escaped. The protagonist grits his teeth, and the captain pulls him with her chain claws. Joe is bound by ropes, and the captain moves swiftly, placing her foot on his head and asking how many that makes now. The captain gets on her motorcycle and starts riding, while Yi is dragged across the ground. The protagonist begs to be spared. In the fortress city, a voice announces that Vice Captain Eileen has returned and orders the gate to be opened. The captain tells them not to open it too wide. They don't want any monsters sneaking in. She slips inside while Joe screams. Inside, Yi puts on some clothes with his hands bound, saying he's completely harmless, that it's the apocalypse and being naked shouldn't be a crime, asking if they really have to go this far. A worker beside him says this guy actually talks and is definitely different from the last ones. Eileen tells them not to lower their guard since just last week, 12 unidentified refugees appeared with the same story. Every time, all naked, all smiling like idiots, and all completely mute. Tess said they were ordinary humans, but something about them didn't seem human. One woman says they should just eliminate them all and save themselves the trouble. Her partner replies that if they start executing people just for being mentally unstable or ugly, they'll be no better than the monsters outside, and tells her to stop complaining, adding that the genetic test results will come out tomorrow. The protagonist wonders if he was imprisoned just because he matched the profile of those 12 weirdos, and if it's a genetic test, they'll definitely detect him, meaning he's completely screwed. A door opens and the worker says that whether he's a pervert or part of that group, for now he just needs to stay calm and behave. They suddenly notice something and ask if the other prisoners were moved somewhere else, realizing only one person remains. The woman next to her says she didn't move anyone and asks where the others went. The bald man chained in front of them stands completely still, and the vice captain keeps watching him until suddenly there are balloons in place of everyone's heads. They all stare in horror, and Joe, also frightened, asks what that is. The heads are huge and floating, with tiny bodies beneath them. A noise echoes. It's the bald man behind them roaring. His head begins emitting strange particles. It splits open and transforms into a monster. Everyone stares in confusion as the creature lunges forward, its body covered in glowing particles, capturing everyone around. The captain sees a particle rushing toward her but manages to dodge it quickly, saying that must be its true form. The trapped workers are panicking as bubbles spread all over their bodies, even over the protagonist, who wonders what the hell is happening. The system notifies that he has been parasitized and the monster begins saying it wants her body. Eileen wonders if it can talk and thinks it's interesting. She's never seen a species like this before. The people tangled in its particles start convulsing and the vice captain shoots her web, moving toward it. She thinks fighting parasitic-type monsters is always a pain. She can't just rush in and punch. Her abilities are practically useless here. and she doesn't even have any magic crystals with her. Then she spots something beside her, a blade. She grabs it and thinks there's still hope. The monster notices and places the two workers in front of it. Eileen aims, throws her web with the blade, and when she realizes it'll hit one of the workers, she stops the weapon. The monster calls her a coward, and the protagonist says he can't eat fast enough. It's still piercing him. Bubbles cover his entire body, and the system notifies that he has devoured parasitic spores, gaining a new trait. Resistance to parasites, resistance increased. The vice captain asks if he's insulting himself now, calling the monster a coward who hides behind hostages. The creature says it's useless, and Eileen asks if he's sure about that. She aims precisely and slashes with the blade. The beast starts screaming. She thinks it's exactly as she expected. The real body is weak, which is why it needs hosts to protect itself. The workers are struck as well. Eileen doesn't understand at first, and the monster asks if she heard it, saying it will simply transfer to them. The vice captain becomes angry, and the monster asks if she's been infected too, until Eileen notices something. Her own hands move by themselves, and she realizes she's no longer controlling them. The vice captain starts strangling herself, and the monster says it won't give her the chance to purge the spores. Then it notices something. The hand stops. Eileen says she's relieved it was her who fell into its trap, because if it had been any of her teammates, they'd already be dead. Her spider silk can control an enemy's body, and of course, she can also use it on herself. The vice captain releases her web, grabs the blade again, and moves. Blood runs down her hand, and Eileen says it's a pity. That's all it took to break free. The monster admits that's true, but says if she keeps fighting like this, she'll bleed out and lose the ability to fight. And if she tries to escape, it'll finish them off, asking what she thinks about escaping together. The vice captain says that before he can knock her down, even if he kneels and begs, she will not leave. The monster watches the protagonist moving and wonders why it cannot control him, deciding it might as well eliminate him. Joe thinks he cannot dodge and that this is bad. Yi notices a web wrapping around his body and pulling him. It is Eileen. The monster stares intently as the protagonist, lying on the ground, thanks her for saving his life, calling her a kind lady. The vice captain looks at him, grabs him by the collar, and asks if he is not one of them, calling him a shameless pervert. Since the monster cannot take over his body, there are two options. Either they both die there, or she will hold off the monster while he runs to get help. Joe looks at her, bites his lip, and says he chooses C. Eileen asks what the hell C is, and Yi answers that it means they team up and blow that ugly mushroom to pieces. The vice captain asks if he could explain why he's so eager to throw his life away. The protagonist glares at the monster, remembering his past, and says it is because he hates people who abandon their teammates and run when faced with monsters, since cowards like that are worse than the monsters themselves. Eileen says he is a brave young hero and wonders if this guy is an idiot or what. Joe thinks that actually the system said the monster's real body is weak. If he is immune to parasitism, he can defeat it easily, and with that victory he will definitely earn a safe place under the extermination squad's protection. The monster says that even in battle they still think about impressing the opposite sex, calling them pathetic creatures. It releases several particles and tells them to die. Yi says that since she can also control bodies, she needs to hurry and take control of him so he can fight. He's not afraid of being parasitized, but also does not know how to fight properly. The vice captain releases her webs to control his body and tells him to listen carefully. She cannot guarantee his safety. She begins controlling him and orders him to move forward, so the protagonist charges. The monster asks how he cannot even dodge the tentacles and how he dares to break through its combat puppet. Eileen keeps controlling him with her threads. Joe moves quickly, trying to grab one of the women. The woman screams, and the vice captain orders him to crush it. Yi pushes forward, the pressure growing more intense. The protagonist slides under her leg, flipping to dodge attacks, and the monster says he is moving faster now and asks if she is controlling him. Eileen says she thinks he has a bit of a brain after all. Joe rushes with his fist clenched. The monster moves quickly, putting up its defense, saying he's too weak to break it. Yi keeps his fist tight, and the system notifies that traits have been activated. Elastic muscles activated. Corrosive mucus activated. The protagonist lands a direct hit, creating a massive impact. The monster screams, and Eileen realizes he had hidden extra abilities. The monster has a chunk of its body torn off and shouts that it is impossible, that he is too strong. Joe stares confidently, and the monster thinks it is not over yet, that it cannot kill him but can still transfer the damage. Then the monster notices something and asks why its wounds are not healing. The vice captain manages to grab the two workers and says she has already extracted all the parasitic spores from him. She crushes what she is holding and says she cannot wait to see how he looks all sliced apart. The monster stares as the floating giant heads start exploding. They watch as the monster screams, loud noises echoing all around. Its body begins to shift and expand, taking on a new form. The monster roars and says he is the first human to see this form and hopes he will not disappoint him. The monster closes its fist, preparing to strike, and the vice captain thinks he is so fast. Eileen is thrown away, crashing against the wall. The protagonist watches as she hits, and the vice captain realizes how strong it is, that this is on a completely different level than before. The monster's hand reaches her, pressing her against the wall with heavy impacts, then throwing her across the room. Eileen is severely injured. The monster stares down at her and says that it just hit her, and it was him. Joe thinks this is bad. The monster charges toward him to attack, and Yi is hit directly, slammed into the ground, badly injured. The system warns that all bones are broken and internal organs critically damaged. Fatal wound detected. Immortality trait activated. Complete regeneration in progress. The protagonist says he is being finished off and will lose his life for real. The cockroach god tells him not to move because if he takes another hit like that, it cannot guarantee saving him. Joe only pretends to be dead and thinks for his older sister to hang in there, that she has to win. The monster watches with a grin, saying he is far too weak. Then he hears a cracking sound. The vice captain moves toward him to strike. The monster grabs her leg and wonders how this happened. It keeps swinging her around, slamming her against the floor, the walls, and even the ceiling. Eileen is badly injured, and the monster says she tied him up with that thing. The beast grabs an iron chair and smashes it against her back, throwing her away again. The vice captain coughs and realizes both her legs are broken, thinking at least her arms should still work. The protagonist, lying on the ground, wonders if even the vice captain of the extermination squad cannot defeat that thing. Then who possibly could save them? Then someone calls out. It is the worker lying on the floor, telling him to tell the vice captain to unleash all her power. The woman shows the crystal in her hand. Joe looks at it, picks it up, looks ahead, and wonders how the hell he is supposed to get that stone to her. The cockroach god says that if he pushes his endurance and muscle elasticity to the limit and charges forward, he might find an opening. Based on his calculations, the maximum success rate is 10%. Yi asks if that is the best chance he has and says that is basically a death sentence. The cockroach god replies that it is 10% to live or 100% to die. He decides. The protagonist looks up, gets to his feet, and activates his elastic muscle trait. He shouts and runs. The monster notices, and the cockroach god says the creature's reaction speed is even faster than expected, the success rate dropping to 5%. Joe thinks there is no turning back now and goes all in. Yi moves swiftly, leaping, and the cockroach god says only 1% remains. The protagonist thinks he can make it until the monster grabs his foot and asks what he thinks he is doing. Joe grits his teeth, and the monster slams him to the ground, stepping closer, ready to crush him. Yi thinks who said it is 0% and believes this position is his last chance. The protagonist throws the crystal toward her, and a moment later the monster stomps on Joe, saying he is far too weak. Then the beast notices something. It says there is a problem. The monster cannot hit him because a barrier is blocking it. The creature looks and realizes it is spider silk, recognizing it belongs to that woman. The vice captain says he really risked his life just to bring her that magic crystal, feeling deeply moved. Eileen spreads her web all over the monster's body and slams it to the ground. Joe summons his weapon, the unfogged snow spider sword, and tells the monster to lose its life. A loud sound echoes. The vice captain looks shocked. The monster says humans who can wield power are still too weak. The beast breaks her weapon and strangles her, punching her in the abdomen so hard it pierces through her body. The protagonist watches helplessly as his partner is struck down, thinking, this is the end. When the monster moves to attack again, someone stops it, slicing off its arm. The monster looks back, and Joe also stares in surprise. A warrior is holding Eileen in his arms, and the monster asks who they are. The warriors glare back. A woman notices the two fallen workers and says, this is bad. Their organs, bones, and flesh are a mess. This is Haley, the extermination captain of Squad 10, who says treatment must start immediately. Captain Philo tells her not to worry, that no monster will get past him to harm her. Corey Virion says it is fine, that he will play with that monster for a while, remarking that it is rare to find one that can actually speak. The vice captain says that monster is different and warns him to be careful. Corey replies for her to relax, saying he is also different himself. The captain orders both to be quiet since she needs complete silence for the treatment. Haley, with a crystal floating between her hands, summons herbs and uses runic resurrection. The wounded are placed atop a giant flower, and the protagonist wonders if those are flowers, thinking it feels so warm, like soaking in a hot spring. Joe is almost fainting, and the cockroach god tells him not to pass out. An adrenaline injection is applied, a syringe plunging into Yi, who shouts that it burns, and Haley wonders why it should hurt. The cockroach god comments that he is a lucky child and tells him to open his eyes and witness the greatest power of this era. Corey says he himself is the supreme commander of the Extreme Squad, and that since the monster understands human speech, they will have a little chat. The monster replies that it does not talk to food. Virion looks confused. Goo starts dripping from the wall. Corey watches as more slime slides down, summoning additional monsters. The lead monster says they will all die here, The creature roars, and the protagonist, lying on the flower, says there are monsters everywhere, above, below, left, and right. Philo moves, releasing his power and cutting down the creatures. The pressure grows stronger, and Joe says that the wind is forming a cyclonic barrier. The captain states that he can contain the monsters, but she will have to handle the blood alone. The captain agrees. Yi wonders if this is the power of a captain-level awakener. The monster says it is not bad they managed to delay 2 captains, but now they will deal with him first. The creature begins to absorb energy, smoke rises, and it grows even larger. The protagonist asks if that is a transformation and says it is so unfair. Corey comments that he envies them since they can grow anytime they want. While he has to go through an entire process just to do that, the monster clenches its fist to strike him, but Virion dodges and says it is a pity because he almost succeeded. The creature is surprised that he managed to dodge, then tries to hit him again with several punches, but Corey evades every strike without taking a single scratch. The monster complains that he is dodging like an annoying insect. Virion jumps and the monster wraps its particles around him, trapping him, saying he is finished. Corey draws his sword, moves swiftly, and lands again after slicing the monster to pieces. The beast asks what just happened. Virion points his finger at it and destroys it completely. Corey looks confident as only the monster's core remains. Virion picks it up, places it inside a transparent container, and says he did it. He just captured the first talking monster in history, and asks if he can give it a name or something. The captain tells him to stop joking around, and that he should be thinking about how to explain the destruction of the new research facility to the council. The protagonist watches and says that power is incredible, and the cockroach god asks if he now sees the difference, saying he can finally faint. Later, in another place that looks like an apartment, Joe wakes up and wonders where he is. Yi panics when he realizes he is inside a bathtub and asks why he is there. The protagonist looks around confused and notices someone bathing beside him, asking what the hell is going on. The vice captain asks if he finally woke up and says that the genetic test results have not arrived yet, and technically he should have stayed imprisoned for one more night. But since the prison was destroyed, she had to bring him home under her supervision. Joe asks if they really have to be so naked and wet together, and Eileen replies that for someone so shy, there is only hot water available at the moment, asking what exactly he was imagining. She thanks him for earlier, asks his name, and says they should get to know each other. Yi blushes upon seeing that she is completely naked. The vice captain tells him to come closer. She steps into the bathtub with him and asks him to turn around and lie down so she can check his wounds. She runs her hands along his back, and the protagonist wonders if she has no sense of personal space, thinking that if this keeps going, Eileen comments that it is impressive, his wounds have completely healed, and he has amazing regeneration. The cockroach god says that his heart rate is at 120 BPM, and that it should activate reproduction mode. The vice captain tells him to look at the scar on her chest, saying that monster was brutal. Even after she healed herself, the scar remained. She asks if he does not believe her. The cockroach god says reproduction mode has been activated. Yi bolts out of the bathroom saying he has to go. Eileen looks confused while the protagonist feels relieved to have escaped, saying that if he had stayed one more second, he would have died of embarrassment, wondering what the hell is wrong with him. On television, a reporter talks about recent spatial fluctuations detected near the city of Minghai, at a small outpost 50 kilometers away managed by non-government forces, which was attacked. Joe says that was where he used to live and wonders if everyone there lost their lives. More notifications appear saying that when the extermination squad arrived in response to the distress signal, the entire outpost had already been abandoned. Yi says that if he had not left, he probably would have been finished too. The reporter reminds citizens that abysses are portals to realms of other worlds, and that if they detect one, they must report it to the authorities immediately. The cockroach god tells him to stop overthinking, that life is not that complicated, and that, anyway, he has good news. His crushed friend, the fat one, is back to life. The protagonist asks about the Imperial Guard, and the cockroach god replies that from now on the fat one is immortal. No matter how many times he is crushed, as long as Joe lives, he will always return. Joe says that sounds a bit overpowered and asks if a cockroach that never dies can really be a guard. The cockroach god explains that the fat one can also level up and that right now he can share vision with him. Yi clicks on Summon Fatty, the system begins to move, and when the fat one is summoned, he says he missed him so much. The protagonist smiles when he sees him, and the fat one comments that he looks kind of ugly now, almost like a human. The cockroach god instructs him to command the fatty to fly around, close his eyes, and synchronize their vision. The fat one moves, goes through the door, and sees the vice captain in the bathtub. Joe asks where the hell he's going, and the fatty says he could feel deep down that Joe wanted to peek inside. Eileen senses something, releases her web, wraps the fatty up, and melts him. The protagonist's mouth, nose, and eyes start pouring intense blood, and Joe collapses as the cockroach god admits he forgot to mention something. When he shares senses with the fatty, If the fatty dies, he suffers the same consequences. The next day, the genetic test report is presented. The vice captain says the results came back normal. Yi looks at the report and Eileen tells him he's free to go. The protagonist looks at her and says he wants to join the extermination squad. The vice captain says the mortality rate is ridiculously high, and Joe asks if she thinks the survival rate for ordinary people is any better. He says he's an awakener too, that he fought beside her, his record is clean now, and asks if he can join or not. Eileen observes him and says the extermination squad's quadrennial selection tournament will take place in 7 days, that his abilities aren't bad, but this year's competition is rumored to be the hardest in history. The protagonist listens and says to count him in, asking if she seems like the kind of person who would ignore a life debt. The vice captain tells him to stand up, admiring his shameless persistence, and says fine, he'll get a chance in the special training. Elsewhere, an officer asks why the commander wants to falsify Joe's medical report and why the boy's genetic test shows something non-human. Corey smiles and says to keep it secret for now. Inside the base, at the entrance of the abyss, people gather, and the protagonist asks if she's saying the special training is just throwing him into an abyss. He wonders if she's joking with him, since the abyss is full of monsters and the ones inside are far stronger than those outside. They say not even an entire army could survive, so he questions how jumping into an abyss can be considered training. His teammates are just 4 teenagers, Justin, Lu Yao, Su Kai, and Song Tao. The vice captain explains that every abyss connects to another world, and depending on how much that world has eroded into theirs, they're classified from Class E to Class S in danger level. The higher the class, the stronger the monsters and the wider the area. This gate leads to an abyss already explored by the extermination squad. Eileen manipulates a screen and says the squad's job is to enter the abyss, eliminate monsters, and slow the invasion of other worlds into reality. These abysses are tunnels left behind by giant worms during the Great Cataclysm. The vice captain continues adjusting the console, a light flashes, and Eileen announces that the portal is open. She says Justin has experience in the abyss and that he'll lead the team. Justin replies that he understands. Later, in a forest during the abyss extermination training, the jungle is dark and silent, classified as danger level E. They look ahead, and the protagonist is amazed, asking if that's the abyss. In front of them are monkeys with snake tails. Joe is shocked and asks if spiders are really that big, saying the trees are enormous and towering. Yi wonders if this is still Earth, saying that just crossing the gate feels like entering another world. Later, still in the same place, the team keeps walking. Justin looks back, throws his bag to the protagonist, and tells him not to touch any monsters in the abyss. He can stay behind and carry their bags. Joe looks confused, and Justin wonders if that guy really spent the night with instructor Eileen or something, and how he dares get close to his goddess. Yi stares at him. Justin asks if he doesn't want to, and Yi says great. If he doesn't have to touch anything, he's safe, so he carries all the bags without complaint, thinking he's totally secure. Justin mutters that this kid really is too straight-laced. The protagonist says to give him the backpacks and asks if everyone's fine. Lu replies that she doesn't need help and can handle it. Joe thinks she seems like a normal person, having no idea why he's forbidden from fighting monsters, and wonders what the harm is, since he's already seen how Awakeners fight inside the abyss. A surge of power bursts out, attacking all the surrounding monkeys. Justin attacks the other nearby monsters too, and the protagonist watches, realizing that Awakeners' crystal weapons absorb monsters' abilities when they are defeated in the abyss. It's like gaining experience in a game. The more they eliminate, the faster they level up. Even the best Awakeners of their rank would become exhausted from constant fighting. Justin says he has eliminated 310 monsters and finally leveled up. Joe wonders about himself and thinks his case is different. Yi spreads a cloth on his collar and begins cutting up monster meat to eat. The system notifies that a new trait has been acquired. Long arms of the snake-tailed monkey. The protagonist realizes he doesn't even need to kill monsters, just eating a piece of them grants him their traits. More notifications appear. Trait acquired, toxin resistance, trait enhanced, toxin resistance, trait acquired, advanced jungle adaptation. After eating, Joe lies on the ground full and thinks he's already made up his mind. If he joins the squad, he's going straight into logistics. He wonders if watching others fight while he grows stronger just by eating counts as cheating, and laughs, saying this is amazing. The cockroach god says, "Praise be to the cockroach god," and Yi replies, "Long live the small and mighty." The warriors finish off a monster nearby and look to the side, wondering if they're fighting for their lives while that guy is literally running a buffet in the back. In a dark jungle, something approaches. It's a heavy-horned beast from the wild. The monster ahead screams that it's the snake-tailed monkey king. The horned beast charges and sends it flying. The protagonist watches from a distance, saying, "That's the final boss of the abyss, the heavy-horned jungle beast, strong enough to crush a snake-tailed monkey king, nearly night level, as if it were nothing." Just half a rank difference already means a massive gap in power. Justin says they can take it down as long as everyone follows his plan. They're a team of rookies, but they'll defeat this boss. Joe stands still, remembering the vice captain's warning that if he got hurt, crippled, or worse for ignoring orders and attacking recklessly, and health insurance wouldn't cover it, so he says he's out. Justin gets angry and says no one needs him anyway, telling him to go sit in the safe zone and watch their bags. Lou watches, and Justin shows the map with the spot where he should stay. Yi walks away, wishing everyone good luck. Sue and Song smile, and Lou asks if the spot he was sent to isn't the ambush point for the final battle. Justin answers that's exactly it, and that he's already planted explosives in the 4 backpacks Joe is carrying. Once the boss locks onto him, they'll detonate them, then move in to finish whatever's left, all at the cost of a useless teammate. Lou asks if that isn't a bit extreme until she notices something. Justin's holding his sword to her neck, telling her to drop the sympathy, warning he'll only let this slide once. Elsewhere, the protagonist is setting up his area when he hears a loud noise and feels the ground shake around him, wondering if the fight is really that crazy since he can hear everything from here. Joe senses something coming and asks what that is. Something moves fast. It's monkeys running past, not attacking. Yi asks if they just ran right by him. Trees are uprooted, and when the protagonist looks to the side, he sees the final boss charging straight at him. Joe is hit head-on, gravely injured. The beast tears through the trees to reach him. Yi lies wounded, wondering why he's even there. The cockroach god says fatal injury detected, expelling foreign objects and initiating repair. The protagonist coughs and asks if the whole team got wiped out. An arrow lands beside a backpack, and Joe wonders if it's a rocket and what's inside their bags. When Yi realizes they're packed with explosives, it's already too late. A massive explosion erupts. The protagonist thinks he's been abandoned again, used as bait. The explosion consumes the area, and the team watches from afar. Justin laughs and asks if they saw his face at the end, saying it was priceless, and that once the flames fade, they'll go down, finish off the boss, and take out 2 birds with 1 stone. Lou's eyes widen, and she tells him to look. Justin turns, confused. The flames die down, the smoke clears, and Joe is standing in the middle of it all, alive. Justin is stunned that he's still breathing. Yi rips the beast's horn from his own body and regenerates instantly. The protagonist, furious, grabs the beast with his bare hands. Justin stares in disbelief. Joe throws the beast aside and shouts, asking if they really think he's that easy to kill. After the monster is thrown into the air, a huge impact shakes the ground near Justin. Someone calls for the captain, and the horned beast lands on top of him. Song, trapped under the creature and badly wounded, calls out for help from his teammates. Justin grips his sword and says he's finished, adding that if he doesn't want to die, he should focus on defeating the boss first. Song begs him not to and pleads for help. Justin talks about the explosive arrows that tear through flesh. Song strains himself to attack and manages to inflict several deep wounds across the beast's body. The creature opens its eyes and stands up again. Justin yells, asking why everyone is standing around, and orders them to attack. Sukai faces the beast and releases blazing flames, while Lou fires bolts of lightning at it. After being hit, the monster lets out a thunderous roar. Justin says it almost fell and thinks this boss isn't nearly as strong as the legends claimed, and it makes sense, since that idiot managed to toss it around like a rag doll. He wonders just how powerful it really is. Justin charges forward with his sword. The beast, now surrounded by the 2 elements it was attacked with, begins absorbing the power. Justin watches in confusion and fear as the creature continues to draw it in. Lou warns that it just absorbed all of the energy and tells them to stop using elemental attacks, shouting that the more they hit it, the stronger it becomes. Justin realizes they can't win, that it's far too powerful. Everyone stares in horror. Justin grits his teeth and suddenly stabs Sukai in the back. Sukai collapses. Lou looks on in shock, trying to say something, but Justin strikes her down too, saying she was just getting in the way and should at least be grateful to be of some use before dying. The beast approaches the 2 fallen teammates, raises its paw, and crushes Sukai. It then moves toward Lou, but something happens. The protagonist rushes in, scoops the girl into his arms, and runs, saving her from the creature's strike. Lou asks why he saved her, and Joe pauses for a moment before answering that it's because she was the only one who didn't humiliate him and actually let him carry her backpack. He remembers that in his past life he was weak, treated as cannon fodder, never once considered valuable. Now, weak again, he's forced to lead and die for stronger cockroaches. He never provoked anyone, yet was always betrayed. In this world, only the strong have the right to control their own fate, so he needs to become stronger. Someone cries for help. It's Justin, trapped under the monster's paw. Yi replies that no monster is untouchable and asks if those weren't Justin's own words earlier. Justin tries to say something, but is crushed by the beast. The protagonist, still holding Lou, uses a sleep-inducing pollen. The tranquil flower's pollen causes unconsciousness when inhaled in large amounts, and Joe thinks it's better to keep that secret for now. He lays her on the ground, unconscious, and tells the beast that now it's just the 2 of them, declaring he'll use it as a stepping stone to evolve. The creature doesn't hesitate and charges. Yi stretches his tongue, wraps it around a tree, and swings away to dodge the attack. The protagonist thinks that after absorbing so many traits along the way, it's time to use them. He summons the mantis scythe, formed from the four limbs of a tropical forest mantis, capable of slicing prey with ease. A flash of light bursts out as Joe plants the scythe into the ground, realizing it's so durable that even after upgrading his weapon, cutting through the boss won't be easy. But even if its outer shell evolved into armor, the abdomen still looks like a weak point. Yi drives the scythe into the monster, making it roar in pain. The protagonist smiles, but the beast is still alive. It charges again and headbutts him, sending him flying into a wall. Joe coughs plasma and thinks the opponent is huge yet still fast. The beast starts channeling electricity through its horn, aiming at him. Yi notices and curses under his breath as the creature releases a lightning blast, causing a massive explosion. Later, in the same place, the smoke clears, the trees are shattered, but the protagonist is gone. The beast looks around in confusion and something moves beside it. It's Joe, with his Treant skin activated. The wooden skin of a Treant is highly resistant to electricity, but extremely vulnerable to fire. Joe realizes it worked just as he expected. No matter how strong a monster is, there's always something in the environment that can counter it. It can block the attacks, but the finishing blow is still missing. Then Yi understands, stretches his arm toward the sword, and thinks that the first strike will decide everything. The protagonist takes a step on the Treant vines used to bind prey, and when grouped together, they form countless tendrils. Joe binds the beast, wrapping its entire body in horns, then leaps with his sword for the finishing strike. But he fails. The creature tears through the vines with sheer brute strength, and Joe wonders if it just shredded everything through raw power alone. Joe activates his elastic muscles, amplifying his strength, and when the beast charges forward, he blocks with his sword, but the blade shatters instantly. Yi staggers back, looks at the broken weapon in his hands, tosses it aside, and smiles. The creature rushes again, but the protagonist says the fight is already over because he's acquired the very trait that will defeat it. Joe swallows an item, a fragment of the beast's own horn. In a burst of speed, Yi dashes straight at the monster, striking with enough force to shake the entire forest. Moments later, heavy breathing echoes through the wreckage. Trees have been split apart and Joe stands atop the fallen beast, plasma dripping from his face, but victorious. Beside him, something gleams in the dirt. A key. The system notifies, key to the secret realm obtained. Using it within the time limit grants access to a hidden dimension. Joe stares and asks what the hell a secret realm is supposed to be. Elsewhere, a voice reports that during training, there was an accident, 3 dead, 1 critically injured, and 1 with only minor wounds. A soldier grabs Joe by the collar, demanding to know what happened inside the abyss and why he was the only survivor. Joe wonders what to say, that he was lucky and escaped the boss, but even that feels like a lie. A hand lands on the soldier's shoulder. It's Corey, who says that this is his subordinate, the recruit recommended by his vice captain, and asks if the soldier is implying he caused the whole disaster. The soldier stammers that he didn't mean that, only that all casualties were military-selected recruits, so it was natural to think so. Virion glances at Joe, then tells the man that no one walks into a dungeon expecting 0 deaths, and it's good that wasn't what he meant, then dismisses Joe. The protagonist smiles faintly. Later, sitting alone and watching the skyline, Joe wonders if Virion covered for him on purpose, just because he was recommended by Eileen, but decides it's not worth thinking about anymore. What matters now is the secret realm. What exactly is it? The cockroach god answers that the secret realm is a hidden dimension within the abyss, accessible only through the key he's holding. Technically, humans can't normally obtain one, but since his DNA is nearly identical to a monster's, the abyss classified his battle with the horned beast as a territorial fight between monsters, hence the drop. Joe asks if that means it's basically a dungeon where he can get stronger, and the god replies yes, but warns that the creatures inside are far deadlier than anything he's faced so far. He'll also have to confront the entity that originally granted the horned beast the key, possibly another intelligent creature like the mushroom monster before, one that guards the abyss's deepest secrets. Joe notices a countdown and asks what it's for. The cockroach god explains that if he doesn't use the key within 24 hours, it will vanish, then asks if he's going now. Yi looks at the key and says of course, but first, there's something he needs to do, since he might die once inside. Later, the protagonist kneels on the ground and tells the vice captain to go on a date with him. Eileen punches him, asking if he seriously dares to flirt with her, telling him to repeat it if he has the guts. Joe, bruised but grinning, repeats that she should go on a date with him. She punches him again, several times, until she finally pauses, raises her hand, and tells him to say it once more. Yai, face swollen and bleeding, says he'll say it 1,000,000 times. Go on a date with him. The vice captain studies his expression, realizing his eyes are just like those soldiers' eyes before their final missions. People trying to fulfill one last regret before dying. She bursts out laughing and says he's got guts, agreeing to go. Later, the two are out together, drinking, watching a movie, Joe jumping at the scary parts, taking photos side by side, riding bicycles through the city. He thinks to himself that this is finally his first real date, something he's dreamed about for nearly 20 years. Every little detail planned to perfection, except for one thing: he never had a girl to go with. Now, he could die without regrets. Eileen looks at him and calls his name, saying she's seen that expression many times before, the look of soldiers right before they die. She tells him that no matter how many final wishes they fulfill, nothing outweighs staying alive. She doesn't know what happened to him inside that dungeon or what's going through his head, but instead of planning how to die without regrets, he should live, because only then can he truly reach the life he wants. The two stand together on their bikes by the riverside. The protagonist looks at her, then at his reflection in the water, smiles faintly and thanks her. The vice captain replies that she hopes next time he'll still have the courage to ask her out again. Then, somewhere else, the cockroach god asks if he's serious, that all he wanted was a date. Joe takes the key in hand and it shatters, releasing a bright light that summons a portal. Yi steps forward, thinking that maybe the god didn't understand, but this is his way of closing the chapter of his past life. The protagonist walks into the portal and it vanishes behind him. Inside, near a dense forest, the secret realm, Darkwood Forest. Joe looks around, saying he can't believe this and that it's insane. Up ahead, a giant snake-tailed monkey roars. Yi dons his armor and thinks that the old him would have just run. The monkey leaps, reaching out to grab him, but the protagonist dodges and counters, ready to strike from behind, when another one appears and grabs his leg. Joe barely escapes, gritting his teeth as more of them appear all at once. One of them catches him, slamming him down and slicing him in half. Part of his body lands against a tree. Gasping for breath, the system notifies, sleep-inducing pollen activated. Smoke spreads, and the pieces of Joe's body regenerate as the immortal trait activates. He thinks these monkeys are only slightly weaker than the heavy-horned ones, but there are too many of them. Without Little Strong's undying trait, that last blow would have killed him for good, and he can't win head-on. Then Yi gets an idea. Since the environment in the secret realm is similar to that of the Abyss, that must mean there are also predators that hunt these monkeys. Perched high in a tree, he watches them below, activates Frog Jump, and thinks that if he can lure the monkeys into predator territory, he still has a chance. Joe starts leaping from branch to branch, the monkeys chasing him from below. As he keeps jumping, one grabs his leg and grins, but Joe activates corrosive mucus and slips free. Then he notices something: spider webs. He grins, realizing he's found it. Ahead lies a massive hunter spider, classified as a guardian. Yi changes his form, summoning wings, and hides behind a tree as the spider senses movement. He thinks that if he distracts the hunter, its natural predator won't target him. Good thing he's absorbed so many traits from corpses already. Then he looks ahead and sees the monkeys getting tangled in webs. The spiders rush in, their energy flaring as they attack, stabbing with sharp claws. The monkeys scream as venom floods their bodies, dropping instantly. From afar, Joe watches, thinking the snake-tailed monkeys are being dominated by their natural predator. But hunter spiders usually target isolated prey, and now a whole troop has invaded their territory. There are dozens of spiders everywhere. Some monkeys still fight back, claws and fangs clashing. Joe thinks that chaos like this is exactly what he needs. Yi dives in, slashing through spiders and cutting monkeys in half with his mantis scythe, thinking that by hitting the stragglers he can balance the battle and make it last longer. The protagonist bites off a piece of a monkey's finger and swallows it, hoping to absorb its traits, but nothing happens. He stares at his hands, confused, until the cockroach god calls him an idiot, asking if he really thought his power was that simple. He can't just bite random monsters and expect to grow stronger. To gain stronger traits, he must devour specific body parts of his enemies, and from now on, the god will mark them for him. The system highlights the biceps of the giant monkey as the target. Joe bites into the muscle and the system notifies, trait acquired, snake-tailed monkey arms upgraded to giant snake-tailed monkey arms. Meanwhile, the monkeys keep fighting the spiders, and Joe thinks that in such a chaotic battlefield, he's got plenty of time to keep evolving. The system reports endurance increased. Trait acquired, venomous spider sting. Trait acquired, paralytic venom. Trait acquired, paralysis resistance. Yi smirks, thinking it's his turn to clean up, and tears through monkeys and spiders alike. Later, in another area, the protagonist stands before a massive gate. The cockroach god says that this is the boss's domain. Joe notes that the aura leaking from within is overwhelming. Then he spots something glowing nearby, bones scattered on the ground, and above them, a floating ball of flame. The protagonist grabs it, and the cockroach god explains that it's a secret realm genesis, an ultra-rare magic crystal found only in monster graveyards within these realms. Over the years, they've absorbed the residual energy of countless slain creatures, containing immense power. He can either absorb it all at once, or use half its energy to tear open a rift and escape safely from the secret realm. Joe stares at the glowing orb in his hand and thinks he must choose, play it safe or bet everything for more power. He decides this is his best chance to evolve. If he leaves now, who knows when he'll ever get another opportunity like this. He declares that even if he has to face the boss, there's no way he's running away now. The protagonist steps forward and the world around him bursts into flames. Sitting on a throne of molten rock is the horned beast man, waiting. Joe can't even gauge the danger level, but the sheer presence makes his body tremble. This is the boss of the secret realm. The creature speaks, asking if he's the one who slaughtered its kin. Yi wonders if it's another monster that can talk. If its kin were the heavy-horned beast from the abyss, and realizes these creatures might have their own kind of society now. Suddenly, the boss moves. Flames surge to the sides as it rushes forward, glaring down at him, saying something about how strange this is. Joe activates his giant snake-tailed monkey arms, and the monster growls that the connection to this world hasn't even opened yet, asking how a human managed to get in. Joe wonders what that means. Is it trying to connect the secret realm to Earth? The boss says it doesn't matter and that he'll find out soon enough. He lunges forward, blasting Joe across the field with a single strike. Yi spits plasma as the boss grabs him and slams him against a tree, then hurls him again. The protagonist is badly wounded, but his immortal trait activates, repairing the damage. The boss notices and says his regeneration speed is impressive, almost like one of his own kind, and that makes him interesting. He says he'll open him up and study him. The monster charges again. Joe activates dynamic vision, enhancing his perception and reaction speed. The boss halts for a second, and Yi realizes that although the creature's strength is overwhelming, its attacks are straightforward. He dodges and counterattacks, thinking that close combat gives him the edge. Corrosive slime activates, but the boss smashes him mid-move, saying it's still too slow and that punching feels better anyway. The monster's blow sends him crashing to the ground. Smoke clears, cracks spiderweb across the scorched earth, and Joe lies in them, still breathing. The boss looks down and asks if he's still alive. Yi thinks, thank God for the elastic muscles, they absorbed most of that hit. The creature stares, points its weapon at him, and says, it's bored now. The weapon comes flying straight for him, but Joe blocks it with hardened skin, the defensive hide taken from the jungle's heavy-horned beasts. It self-repairs and offers extreme durability. The boss keeps attacking relentlessly, but Joe blocks again and again. The cockroach god warns him that his hardened skin is melting under the flames, and that he can still use the secret realm's Genesis crystal to escape in time. Yi refuses, thinking he hasn't lost yet. He spots an opening and charges from behind using the monkey fist trait. The pressure grows unbearable. The boss grabs him and slams him into another tree, shaking the entire area. The heat is suffocating. The creature raises its spear and activates a lava jet, hurling streams of molten fire at him. Joe braces, dodging through the flames as they grow hotter and thicker. He leaps with frog jump but gets clipped on the leg, cursing that he can't dodge everything. The system warns, immortality activated, continuous damage detected, regeneration suspended. Joe panics. Even his insane healing isn't working. The boss unleashes an inferno, shouting that he'll melt him into nothing. Yi glares back and says he'll drag him down with him. The protagonist summons the horned beast spear, surging forward and shouting for the monster to go to hell. He strikes. The beast's horn cracks. Joe tries to destroy it completely, but a burst of raw energy erupts as the boss amplifies the flames, engulfing him in fire. Yi collapses, his body burning and torn apart. The cockroach god yells that this isn't a monster he can beat yet, and that he won't just watch him throw his life away. It activates the secret realm's emergency exit, opening a dimensional escape gate. But Joe throws the flaming orb, shattering it to pieces. The cockroach god shouts in anger, and Yi says he made peace with dying long ago. The god falls silent as the broken orb releases a surge of power, spreading wildly around him. A blinding light floods the chamber. The boss freezes, saying what's happening, realizing that power is pouring out like a tidal wave. The system notifies he did not flee from certain death. Second trial of the cockroach god passed. Fighter form unlocked. The blinding light grows even stronger, and Joe's body transforms. He says a new force is coursing through him and asks what it is. The cockroach god answers that the fighter form is a state that lets all of his traits evolve freely. Yi watches the flames closing in as the monster unleashes another lava jet, triggering a massive explosion. When the smoke finally clears, the cockroach god explains that the fighter form armor fuses several traits: the cockroach's carapace, the mutant frog's elastic skin, and the jungle heavy-horned beast's hardened hide. As he continues to gain new traits, the armor evolves further. Even that concentrated lava blast barely scratched its outer layer. This biocomposite armor is solid. The boss growls that no matter what he looks like now, there's no way he could have survived that barrage. A loud crack echoes, the monster freezes. Joe, using the giant monkey arm combined with elastic muscles, launches his counter. The cockroach god explains that in fighter form, he can activate multiple traits simultaneously, chaining them into combos with no cooldowns between switches. Joe grins, saying that combining traits allows him to strike in ways enemies never expect. The god adds that in this form, his strength, endurance, and agility are multiplied tenfold. Yi exclaims that it's incredible. The monster stares in disbelief, asking how he doesn't even have a scratch. Joe activates dynamic vision, elastic muscles, and mantis scythe blade, combo engaged. The boss spins his spear upward, but Joe's elastic leg whips forward, while his elongated arm wraps around the monster's body, slamming it into the ground so hard that cracks spider across the earth. The boss roars, "No!" and tries to retaliate, but Joe blocks and pins him down. The beast sees his weapon buried beside him and mutters that even if this resets the expansion progress of his world, he must recover his energy, then drives his spear into the ground. Joe notices as lava erupts through the cracks. The boss declares that Yi will regret not finishing him sooner. This was his last chance. Joe focuses, activating his ocular ability. The cockroach god explains that in fighter form, he can see enemies' weak points and extractable trait zones directly. The stronger the trait, the brighter the glow. Standing on a small patch of ground untouched by lava, Joe moves fast. The monster, confused, wonders where he went until Yi appears beside him, landing a brutal kick that sends the beast flying. The boss crashes, staring in horror, calling him a real monster. Joe picks something up and swallows it. The creature stands again, announcing that it has regained its strength and raising a torrent of lava, claiming this wave will burn him to ash, that he'll still be the final victor. But Joe throws something ahead, and a surge of molten fire erupts from his own hand. The monster watches, shocked, shouting that it's impossible. Yi smirks and asks if anyone ever told him his horn tastes like chili sauce, saying he loves that flavor. The boss's eyes go wide as he screams for his mother, begging to go home because there's a monster that eats other monsters. Joe laughs darkly, saying that this is the beast's own ultimate move, asking if the boss can handle being hit with it himself. The system flashes. New ability acquired, Horn of the Heavy-Horned Beastman, can be summoned as a spear. Joe calls out his technique, Scorching Sky Spiral Fusion. As Yi charges forward, a sinister smile on his face. Blazing flames spiral around him, consuming the boss completely. Its screams echo until only ashes remain. When the smoke clears, something glimmers before Joe. He asks what it is, and the cockroach god explains that it's a Monster Cieli, a rare drop exclusive to Lord-class monsters in secret realms. Using it registers the monster for the Imperial Iron Guard, allowing transformation into that creature. Joe smirks, thinking that the chubby guy finally has a use. Yi touches the item and it shatters into fragments. The system notifies, Imperial Iron Guard Fatty has obtained the Heavy-Horned Beastman record. The system asks if he wishes to summon the Imperial Iron Guard, and Joe confirms. Fatty is summoned, lands heavily, and complains that he's smaller now. Joe laughs, saying that's insanely awesome. Fatty kneels before him as the system displays his stats, and he stares, asking if that's really him and why he looks so ugly. The cockroach god explains that the Iron Guard's transformation isn't just cosmetic, as he defeats stronger monsters and unlocks new records. His power scales alongside theirs. A nearby tree snaps and collapses, and Fatty reacts instantly, catching and hurling the massive trunk aside with ease. He says he can't fit through doors anymore, but insists they shouldn't think he's useless now. A rumble echoes through the forest, and Joe tells him to calm down, asking if he really thinks he'll stay a cockroach forever. He tells him they're moving out. It's time to see what comes next. Fatty summons his weapon, the spear, and points it straight at his master. Joe blocks as bursts of flame explode from it. Yi raises his hand to shield himself, remarking that even the boss's lava jets didn't burn this hot. The cockroach god explains that Fatty no longer needs to spend energy maintaining the secret realm, so now he's at 100% of his lord form, showing just how terrifyingly strong the Imperial Iron Guard truly is. Joe calls him back and thinks to himself that his most powerful trait, the sharp horns of the heavy-horned beast, has evolved again, now carrying the Molteni attribute. Fatty can transform fully into a heavy-horned beastman, able to fight head-on. He's the ace card, the secret weapon to turn any battle around. Joe risked his life to reach this point. All that remains now is the selection tournament. With these traits and a full-powered secret realm lord ready to fight at any moment, he's confident he can handle whatever challenge comes and secure his place in the extermination squad. 3 days later, in the arena, crowds fill the stands. Joe looks ahead, stunned by how many people have gathered. A voice echoes through the speakers announcing that the Extermination Squad Selection Tournament is the most important event in Nirai City. It's the vice captain speaking. She explains that it's not only for recruiting new squad members, but also serves as a political battleground for power in Nirai. The city's 4 major families each send one representative, and the tournament's winner determines which family will hold the presidential seat for the next 4 years, controlling Nirai's political and military power. The man with the eye patch is Bai Haoyu. He states that the Bai family runs the city's intelligence department and competes alongside other elite operatives. Tony Olaf of the Olaf family is there too, the favorite to win this year's tournament. The military's goal is to turn the extermination squad into a support department under their full command, giving them total control over Nirai's armed forces. Tony declares that this tournament will decide whether the Olaf family secures its 4th consecutive term in power, and everyone knows how high the stakes are. Bai announces that the Bai family will continue to back the Olafs as always. The crowd stirs and begins taking photos when Saint Karen User of the Esper Church appears, her first public appearance. According to reports, her power involves hypnosis or mental control, which is why her followers wear blindfolds to avoid direct eye contact. Joe mutters that it makes sense those followers already looked strange. Eileen comments that the church still benefits them for now, since remote regions rely on its influence to maintain order. And their research on espers helps the government understand psychic powers better. Everyone watches in silence as the saint passes. Bai remarks that he never thought they'd actually send the saint herself to compete. Olaf tells him not to worry about her, she's not the target. Their real concern is the one walking up next. A young man in uniform and glasses, around their age, Dronzer of the Zhang family. Tony scoffs that the Zhang family couldn't find anyone better and ended up sending that useless young master, suggesting that if they surrender now, they can still keep an honorary seat in parliament. Je replies that even if they lose their seats, the Zhang family will never become the military's lapdogs. Bai shrugs, saying that soon, Nirai will only have 3 great families left anyway. Joe notes that tensions between them are high. The vice captain explains that the Zhang family manages the Esper Technology Research Institute and is allied with the extermination squad, but Zhang himself is definitely the weakest of the 4 representatives. The military's true goal is to help him place well in this tournament, so they can keep the family's seat in parliament and expand their influence further. Joe promises he'll do his best. Eileen removes her earpiece and quietly asks the commander if he really believes in Yi, worrying that if the military takes full control of parliament, they'll all be in serious trouble. Corey replies that Joe saved Luo and returned alive from the abyss. That alone proves he's capable, and asks if she doesn't agree. Later, in the same arena, the crowd cheers as vines rise from the ground, forming a giant flower in the center. Captain Haley appears standing atop it, greeting everyone. Welcome to the Extermination Squad Selection Tournament. She herself will oversee the first round. The tournament has 3 stages, and the first is called Extreme Ascent. Behind her, a mountain path lined with 100 stone steps rises into the sky. Reaching even the 10th step counts as passing. But based on past records, 2/3 of participants are usually eliminated in this round alone. The crowd gasps at the announcement, asking if that's really possible. Haley smiles calmly and says that Squad 10 will do their best to ensure everyone's safety, but each contestant must proceed at their own risk. The first round of this year's Extermination Squad Selection Tournament begins now. Everyone watches closely and mocks, saying it's just climbing a mountain, not understanding what could be so hard about it. They rush toward the mountain while others remain in the arena. The saint, the boy with glasses, and the other 2 watch the movement, and Bai comments that they're a bunch of idiots who don't even realize how they're about to lose their lives. The participants climb confidently, saying it doesn't matter to the elites of the 4 families who are trembling like puppies and wondering who will be the champion of the first round. Suddenly, someone takes another step, a light flashes, and the boy feels something strange. Everyone panics as they realize they've appeared somewhere else, and one of them asks where the hell they are. They're soon hypnotized and begin walking together. From a distance, the protagonist asks what's happening and why everyone is frozen like that. The captain explains that it's not just a physical climb. The 100 steps ahead are made from the bones of a phantom king-class monster, one of the strongest creatures humanity has ever defeated. Even dead, its bones can trap anyone in an illusion, preventing them from reaching the top. If they don't find a way to escape soon, various monsters will start appearing. The boys panic. Haley says what awaits them is termination, and they all lose their lives. The captain confirms, saying they've been terminated, and Joe wonders if this is real. Eileen explains that each illusion has its own goal: survive until time runs out, reach a specific place, or defeat a certain monster, and once the condition is met, the person escapes. She can't contact him inside the illusion, so he'll have to rely on his own judgment. Olaf recalls the mission: to be the one who climbs the highest, and orders them to move forward. Tony takes the first step with his soldiers beside him. Olaf stares ahead as powerful flames surge and a dragon is summoned. Tony smiles, saying this illusion was made to counter his abilities. Olaf thinks he only needs to last 5 minutes and says, Plan 1. Tony and his men form an ice barrier. Olaf smiles, and when Tony snaps his fingers, the ice pierces through the dragon's body, defeating it, and it vanishes. Olaf continues climbing the steps. Corey observes and says it's not bad at all, almost no resistance, and asks if the subordinates are all elite awakened, noting that the military is clearly giving their all to win this year. Eileen thinks he still looks so calm. Virion comments that it's not yet time to be nervous, and the vice captain apologizes. Corey explains that the first 10 steps only serve to filter out rookies who don't fit the extermination squad's profile. For elite candidates, it's just a warm-up. But the higher they go, the harder the illusions become. Eventually, they'll run out of subordinates to sacrifice, and that's when the real battle begins. To reach the top, one must unleash a technique that surpasses their skill limits, or have a mindset capable of calmly adapting to any challenge. In the stands, the crowd asks if someone is still in the launch zone and if he's given up. The protagonist, still there with his eyes closed, opens them, feeling ready, and takes the first step. A sound echoes, and inside the illusion, Joe is falling from a smooth cliff. Yi summons his flame weapon, stabs it into the ice, and braces himself. Then he notices something, a monster approaching. Joe realizes he's on a frictionless cliff where he can't even stand, and flying monsters attack from above. This kind of setup is truly tricky. The system highlights key points, and Yi activates his attack. Spider venom sting and sticky tongue snap. The protagonist advances to fight the monsters with his power, absorbing and defeating the bird. Joe thinks this is nothing, just a warm-up. Yi keeps climbing the stairs and understands that the illusion monsters look intimidating, but their strength equals that of the Grunos from the silent shadow jungle. Eileen's information mentioned that near the summit, the monsters reach Guardian class, and at his current level, he can handle them. Another illusion is a labyrinth. The protagonist looks around and thinks that illusions like these always create difficult, unpredictable terrain. If someone ends up in an environment that completely opposes their powers, they're practically trapped. Joe releases flames to clear a path and sees a bright light in the distance. Yi thinks his abilities can adapt to any environment and any place. The protagonist keeps advancing. The boys near the steps ask if he's climbing 2 at a time, just to show off and say that by starting last on purpose, he really wants to be the main character. Joe continues climbing with ease, and the boys, surprised, complain that it's unfair, calling him a beast. One of them calls him boss and begs to be taken along. The 2 boys beside him get angry, hit their teammate, and ask who's showing off and if he just called them show-offs. The boy holds his head and begs them not to hit him, saying he was wrong and not thinking straight. Corey comments that he's even faster than expected, and that, at this pace, he might actually reach the top. Eileen wonders if Joe will really make it to the summit, and recalls that he was just an uninformed rookie not long ago. She remembers Yi saying he'd choose option C, join forces, and destroy that ugly monster, and assumes he's not the type to ignore someone who once saved his life. The vice captain thinks that now he's aiming for something even the commander himself couldn't reach. Meanwhile, the participants keep moving, and the captain announces that Bai has finished the course with 38 steps, the Saint with 35, and the current highest score belongs to Olaf with 40 steps, keeping the lead. Tony looks back and notices the boy from the Zhang family exhausted. Ja, tired, sees someone get eliminated and realizes they timed their entrance into the illusion to coincide with his. Ambushing him inside, everyone ganged up against him. With only 31 steps, 9 short of his family's record, he wonders where this will end. Then someone calls out to him. It's Olaf, telling him to bark like a dog 10 times and quit now, promising that his family will keep a seat in parliament. A dignified way out, just one sacrifice. Ja's eyes fill with tears, and he starts crying until he notices someone passing by his side. Tony is surprised to see someone advancing and wonders who it is. The protagonist just passed the boy on the steps. Ji thinks he's incredibly strong, and that if people had known someone like this lived in Nirai City, they would have begged him to represent them. Eileen asks Joe to help Ja, but Yi keeps walking, and the vice captain asks if he didn't hear her. Tony tells his men to stop slacking off, saying the Olaf family spent a fortune training them so they could hold the line in moments like this, that they need to keep following for a few more levels, and that they have to beat the family record of 50 steps. But one of his men collapses, then another, and Tony gets irritated thinking it's a bit reckless, but he's moving fast this time. Where did that boy go? Then Tony looks back and sees Joe, shocked. The protagonist passes him and says that second place is his. Olaf becomes furious, and Joe keeps climbing the steps effortlessly, asking why he stopped chasing, saying a real man doesn't give up that easily. Tony yells for him to wait. Later, in the same place, Yi keeps climbing, and the captain announces that he's in the lead with 60 steps, 82 steps, 99 steps. He's tied the highest record ever set by Commander Kolo. One more step and he'll reach the top. The crowd watches, and a man with glasses says they really did it. They're witnessing history. His partner beside him asks who that guy is, and someone crying hard says he bet everything he had on Tony and wants to know how he lost. The casino boss thinks that the kid who was just at the bottom moments ago bet all his organs on his own victory, and now he's ruined. The protagonist takes one more step and says that, at a time like this, all he wants to say is, and asks if that's it. His earpiece starts ringing, and Eileen yells for him to stop showing off, telling him to help Ja, saying he just ignored her, won one round, and now he's acting cocky. Joe replies that he swears he's not, that he'll complete the mission he promises. Yi moves downward, and the man with glasses asks what he's doing, if he shouldn't just go back the safe way to avoid more illusions. Tony notices him coming back, and the protagonist passes him, asking why he's still on the second step, if he's even good at this or what. Olaf wonders if he's done and came back just to humiliate him. Joe approaches Jay, looks him in the eyes, and Jay wonders what's happening. Yi picks Jay up and starts climbing upward. Tony asks if he's really going to carry dead weight all the way to the end, saying he's alone in a two-person difficulty illusion. The protagonist keeps advancing with the boy in his arms, passing through multiple illusions, one filled with flames where Joe uses a barrier. When faced with monsters ahead, he defeats some and keeps moving by jumping, and in another illusion, there's a river with fish. Yi flies while carrying the boy. Jay, holding on to him, thinks that at first, he tried to help however he could, inside the illusion just so he wouldn't be a burden to the boss. But the boss reacted so fast, it was unbelievable. Before he could even adjust to the dizziness of entering the illusion, the boss was already moving. That's when he realized the best thing he could do was shut up and hold on tight like a real accessory. That's how he could help the boss the most. Then, still in the same place, the protagonist stops and sets the boy down. Jay pants heavily and realizes he's on the 50th step. Joe says that as long as he's one step ahead of Tony, he should be safe. Jay starts crying and says they promised he'd be well rewarded after the tournament. From today on, he's a benefactor of the Zhang family. Tony shouts. Yi looks back and Olaf asks if he knows what he's doing, if he's trying to ruin the plan his family spent 4 years preparing, warning that if he messes with his family, he's done for. The protagonist stares back without any hint of fear and recalls Justin, remembering that he had packed Joe's 4 bags with explosives before they left. As soon as the boss targeted him, he detonated everything. The only cost was sacrificing a useless teammate. Yi also remembers the soldier grabbing his shirt and asking what really happened in the abyss and why he was the only one who returned. In the present, the protagonist wonders if these people are so used to being tyrants that they think everyone must bow before them, and if they're not the ones creating enemies everywhere. Joe looks at the boy and asks if he wants him to help blow off some steam. Jay replies that it's fine, he'll just add it to the reward. Yi moves quickly and kicks Olaf hard. Tony thinks that not even the commander of the extermination squad openly challenges them and wonders who the hell he thinks he is. Olaf falls to the ground, tumbling down all the steps, and someone films him falling. Somewhere, a man stands up angrily and demands a report on this Joe by tonight. Jen Ting, head of the city of Nirai's intelligence department and current patriarch of the Bai family, is beside him. Rhodes Olaf, president of the Nirai city parliament and current patriarch of the Olaf family, says it doesn't matter who he is. If he dares to mess with him, he'll pay the price. The next day, in a house, the protagonist sits eating, thinking that the first round of the selection tournament ended 2 days ago and shocked everyone. Tony, the main favorite before the match, only finished in 3rd place, but to be fair, he's still impressive. After being kicked off the mountain, he actually climbed all the way back up alone and collapsed at 49. Before the match began, he had bet all the magic crystals he brought from the abyss, plus his own organs, and made a fortune at 1,000 to 1 odds. And the old man thanks him for sparing his life, while Joe thinks that the casino boss had to sell everything he owned just to pay him the 50 gold coins he promised. And there, 1 gold coin was worth about 1,000 yuan before the catastrophe. According to Eileen, 50 gold coins are roughly what she earns in an entire year of monster hunting. So yes, he made a small fortune as a reward for helping that young master from the Zhang family. Then someone bursts through the door, Yi jumps, and it's Eileen. The protagonist is surprised to see her, and the vice captain asks if he really turned down a 3-story villa from the Zhang family just to stay in this rundown apartment and asks if he's stupid. Joe widens his eyes and points out the window, saying it's close to her extermination squad dorm building, so it's safer that way. Eileen's house is nearby, and the vice captain tells him not to waste money like that. In the apocalypse, every coin should be spent on getting stronger. There's an auction tonight, and she's taking him. He needs to broaden his horizons. The protagonist takes the invitation and asks about the auction. Later that night, the two are walking. Joe looks around and jumps at the sight of a rat, asking if this creepy place is really where the auction's being held and if this is for real. Eileen replies that the items sold there aren't allowed on the public market but are in high demand. It's what they call the black market. Yi asks if that isn't illegal and if she's participating. They stop in front of a door and the vice captain knocks. The door opens, they enter, and Eileen tells him to stay close. The two walk until the protagonist notices another door nearby, and they enter a lit room. Joe widens his eyes, hooded. Masked people surround them, aiming weapons in their direction, and someone approaches without a weapon, but also hooded. The person removes the hood but keeps the mask and asks for the invitation. Eileen hands it over, the masked person takes it and tells them to follow. In another room, the two sit in the stands, the place packed, and the protagonist says there are so many people. Joe leans back in his seat and asks if this place is even legal. And the vice captain replies that with the Bai family's backing, legal or not, it's considered legal now. Besides, ordinary people don't even qualify to enter, so the impact is minimal. On the second floor sat Olaf's private group, the Olaf family's fourth branch, alongside Broker Hart. The guard noticed something and approached him, saying that was Eileen from the extermination squad in seat 17 together with Joe. The broker glanced at the two of them and said the world was truly small. Then someone appeared on stage to welcome the guests, the auctioneer, announcing that tonight's auction featured rare items with over 100 treasures and wishing everyone a profitable evening. The first item was a flawless mermaid tail, an extremely rare monster part edible for ordinary humans, renowned for its powerful anti-aging effects. Those who knew understood how hard it was to obtain. A boy in the audience said the first item was already incredible, a premium-grade treasure so rare it could even save his great-grandfather. The God Roach remarked that the mermaid tail was detected as an F-grade trait, and the protagonist said it was such trash-tier material, wondering why they were fighting over a piece of junk. Eileen replied that it prolongs life and asked if he was stupid or what. The auctioneer then announced that the next items were unsold leftovers from previous auctions, now with extra discounts, starting price 100 copper coins. A young man said the stuff was useless, and his partner beside him added that not every monster corpse was valuable, probably just bait to scam rookies. The God Roach said multiple monster corpses were detected, rated E, A, C, D, and A. Joe grinned, raised his hand, and said he'd take them all. The auctioneer thought they'd found an idiot, while Yi thought he'd strike gold tonight, and the vice captain muttered that he was such an idiot. The auctioneer continued. Next was one of the most anticipated items of the night, from a rank C abyss, the Frozen Plateau. Eileen said she wouldn't say another word. What she wanted was right there. The auctioneer explained that it was a magic crystal from the Frozen Plateau, the Grossfang Spider Plateau. The crystal had over 50% purity, perfectly intact, and of high quality for any ice-type awakened user. The starting price was 1 gold coin and the bidding began. The vice captain's expression grew serious as she recalled fighting that talking monster. Thinking that once the Snowfang blades gained ice affinity, they'd become far stronger, she would never suffer humiliation again. Eileen raised her paddle and the auctioneer announced a bid from seat 17, asking if there were any other offers. Someone pressed a button, seat 1. The auctioneer said the most honored guest, seat 1, had bid 10 gold coins, with each increase now at 1 gold coin. Hart smiled and said so this was the item she wanted, the Grossfang Spider Plateau Crystal, exactly what young Master Tony had requested. Eileen looked back, clearly displeased, realizing that the Olaf family was also bidding and thought this had just become complicated. Then Eileen raises the bid to 11 gold and the broker increases it to 15. The vice captain keeps going, raising it to 20 gold, and Hart immediately pushes it up to 25. The people around them wonder if seat 17 has gone mad for daring to go against the Olaf family, and the protagonist thinks this is not good at all. The broker remarks that she's only a vice captain and questions how much money she could possibly have. Eileen stares him down and raises it to 30 gold. The hostess says things are getting exciting and asks if the treasure will really go to seat 17. The vice captain thinks this is all her savings and hopes it works. The hostess, thrilled by that number, announces that it's not over yet because seat 1 offers 35 gold. Everyone looks surprised and Eileen feels frustrated. A guard approaches and says his boss asked him to deliver a message. Is she already out of money? If she can't pay to play, she shouldn't even show up. This isn't a place for the poor. Meanwhile, the broker up above laughs and wonders what their faces must look like now. The hostess calls for the final bid, and the protagonist grabs the sign from his partner's hand, stands up, and offers 50 gold. Everyone is shocked, and Eileen is astonished. Hart says this is interesting because in all his years as an agent for the Olaf family, he's never seen anyone challenge and surpass them to the very end. The hostess then announces that seat 1 retaliates, jumping straight to 55 gold. They keep competing, and the current bid reaches 80 gold. Joe smiles and bids 90 gold. Eileen says they can't go any further, but Yi thinks they have 80 gold and remembers Zhong saying that village alone is worth at least 20, so they can keep going. He tells her not to panic, they'll secure the item first, and if needed, he'll talk to Zhong. Jay steps in and says he's right, that a few gold coins are nothing, and tells them not to worry because he'll cover what's missing. The guard informs his boss that they can't keep bidding as they've already exceeded the family's budget, and besides, Zhong is backing them now. The protagonist flips them off and mocks them. Hart grows furious. Later, elsewhere, the vice captain thanks them for everything that night and says she'll repay what she owes little by little. Joe replies that she shouldn't be so formal because every coin should be invested in becoming stronger, and that he's only following her own advice to the end. Suddenly, they feel pressure in the area, and Zhe, startled, asks what's happening. The vice captain pulls out her device, which issues an emergency alert. All members of the extermination squad must respond to Response Plan A, Disaster A. Around the city, loud sounds blare and a monster bursts out from the ground, roaring deafeningly and radiating powerful energy. After Eileen receives the emergency message, another one arrives ordering her to gather the patrol teams and escort civilians to the nearest shelters. The vice captain tries to give orders to the two, but the protagonist cuts her off, telling her not to say another word, because in times like this, every combat unit counts, and right now, they're all hers. Ji says to count on him, and the three of them start running. Elsewhere, fire is already spreading. A drone flies overhead, announcing for all civilians to proceed immediately to the nearest shelter. People start running in panic toward safety until they hear a roar. When they look up, they see flying monsters. One dives at high speed, hitting the ground and killing someone instantly. Those nearby grow even more desperate and run with all their strength. In the chaos, a child calls out for her mother. Then someone appears. It's her mother, who finally finds her. As everyone flees, debris starts to fall, causing massive impacts. More monsters of different species close in. One of them leaps forward and kills a young man in a single strike, while others keep slaughtering the people around. The woman, holding her daughter in her arms, keeps running until a monster appears in front of her and charges to attack. Her only reaction is to close her eyes, but the protagonist suddenly appears, slashing the creature apart and saving them. The woman looks toward him in shock, realizing she's been saved. Joe unleashes his flames and hurls them at the monsters, protecting the woman and her daughter. She thanks him, relieved. Soon after, Yi hears a voice in the crowd. It's Eileen rescuing two people. The man beside him, watching, comments that those must be the same guys who were with Tony earlier. The protagonist hears that and thinks that, as awakeners, they just stood there while civilians were being massacred by monsters, and afterward disguised themselves as ordinary people to escape to the shelter. The vice captain tells the two that they're being reassigned to the reserve force, effective immediately to help defend the city. One of them replies that he came there to spend money, not to risk his life, and asks who's going to pay if he gets hurt. His partner agrees, saying this is her team's problem and has nothing to do with them. One of them recognizes Joe and mocks him, saying he should go since he loves showing off so much, and that he'll be waiting to see the year's favorite crushed by monsters. Suddenly, chains wrap around his body, restraining him. It's Eileen. The guy demands to know what she's doing, and the vice captain coldly replies that maybe he didn't hear her clearly. This is a conscription, not a negotiation. She orders them taken away and treated as deserters. The man shouts that they can't do this to him, claiming he's an Olympic athlete and not even part of the extermination squad yet. The protagonist steps in, saying the city is crawling with monsters, and even so, he's still busy kissing up to the four families, asking if he still thinks he deserves to join the squad. At that moment, Eileen receives another message. All combat personnel near the Vermilion Gate must provide immediate support. Explosions erupt in the area, and the vice captain decides to leave that mission in his hands. Soon after, still in the same area, Eileen rides her bike with her partner on the back. Ahead of them, near the gate, there are countless monsters, and the vice captain says there's no time to wait for reinforcements. They're going in now. They jump off the bike and charge forward. Around them lie several dead civilians and slain monsters. Joe comments that they arrived too late. More monsters appear from the sides in great numbers, and Yi asks if it's really just the two of them against all of that. Eileen scans the surroundings until she spots something nearby and says that if that cannon still works, they can hold the line. She tells him that if he can keep them back for 2 minutes, she'll bring the cannon back online. Several monsters approach at once, and the protagonist, desperate, asks if he's supposed to hold them off alone for 2 whole minutes. Then he says it's fine, he'll manage. Joe starts slicing the monsters apart until he notices one heading toward her. He shoots out his sticky tongue, pulls the creature back, and hurls it off the cliff. Another monster charges at him with a roar. The protagonist turns instantly and is struck. Joe unleashes his flames through his spear, breathing heavily. The monster is massive, and Yi finally understands why those two didn't dare set foot on the battlefield. One wrong move against these creatures and he'd be dead. Looking down, the protagonist sees a corpse with part of its face torn off. Furious, Joe lunges at the beast, leaps onto it, and pierces it with his spear, thinking that's no excuse to run away. Yi grabs a piece of the monster's body and devours it. The system notifies him that a new trait has been acquired, Dragon Grip Claw. The protagonist grows stronger and lands a powerful strike, but something else charges at him, causing a huge explosion. When the smoke clears, a massive creature appears surrounded by swarms of its offspring. It launches a sphere filled with them, triggering another explosion as countless spiders rush forward. Joe realizes that at this rate, they'll never stop coming, wondering where those 2 promised minutes of reinforcements are. He thinks that if they lose this wall, the city behind them will be destroyed and countless lives will be lost. From the moment he stepped onto that field, retreat stopped being an option. Flames spread all around as more monsters, both walking and flying, approach. The protagonist raises his spear and activates his skill. Scorching Sky, Smelting Spiral, obliterating the monsters. In the city's defense control room, a voice reports that none of the defense systems are online and that the main crystal isn't responding. They need to rerun the activation sequence. The man beside him says that's not good since the sequence executes but the crystal doesn't react. Then someone steps forward and says to let him handle it. The chief asks who he is. The operator at the computer answers that he's the young master of the Zhong family, the clan that developed the entire defense system, and that no one there understands it better than he does. Ji goes straight to the terminals, summoning 2 additional hands from his body to work on the other screens. He quickly notices something and realizes the response loop crystal is working. The energy amplifier crystal is online, and the threat detection signal is stable. If both the crystal and hardware are fine, then maybe... Jay keeps typing rapidly and concludes exactly what he suspected. It was a power interruption. Someone used the emergency override during the system's diagnostic phase to cut off all power output from the crystals. The watchtowers, the external defense, every city defense cannon, and even the 3-layer core that powers the entire protection system were all disabled by the shutdown. That shutdown command isn't even used during regular maintenance. Someone deliberately sabotaged the city's defenses. They're trying to hand Nirai over to the monsters. He orders them to prioritize rebooting the internal defense weapons. The young master presses a button, and the crystal begins to release energy. The cannons reactivate and start firing again. Everyone cheers, relieved that the system is back online. Ji keeps operating the computers, thinking that it's a good thing the extermination squad performs large-scale disaster drills so often. The church is handling evacuation and field medical support, while the intelligence bureau maintains order inside the city. A masked officer announces that passageway C is jammed, and instructs everyone to move to the back routes. The young master reflects that the military originally planned to let the extermination squad fight alone and wear itself down during the monster invasion. But now, with the city on the verge of collapse, they're being forced to intervene. He thinks that if they had mobilized earlier, even with the defense system sabotaged, the damage wouldn't have been so severe. And it's not over yet. Even with the system rebooted, the remaining towers must hold the line at all costs. That wall cannot fall. If the wall is lost, the city is lost. Elsewhere, the protagonist pants heavily after cutting down all the offspring, thinking they won't even let him breathe. After the last smelting spiral, he can't fire another one for a while. He asks if his partner isn't done yet. Then a different kind of monster approaches. Joe leaps toward it, stares it down, and shoots flames directly into its mouth. Yi then falls to the ground, looks at the cannons, and remarks that she said 2 minutes. But those 2 became 4, and now it's almost 10, asking again if she's done yet. A monster creeps up from behind, fiddling with its weapon. The protagonist turns and comes face to face with it. The monster charges toward the cannon, and Joe realizes it's heading for the tower. Yi quickly moves, jumps onto the monster, ignites his flames, and finishes it with a single strike. Another monster continues advancing toward the cannon, and the protagonist thinks he won't be able to stop it until the cannon activates and blasts the creature to pieces. Joe asks if his partner is finished, and Eileen appears behind him, saying it took a bit longer, but the powerful crystal has been restored. The cannons start firing at the monsters and soldiers arrive. Yi notices them, and the vice captain says they're finally in position. The wall towers will be back online soon, and until then, they'll hold the line no matter what. The soldiers reply that they understand. They see the monsters on the ground moving fast and start shooting nonstop in their direction. But the creatures reach the soldiers, and the fight turns into close combat. One soldier is knocked down, and another shouts for him to get up, but a monster lunges at him too, throwing him to the ground. The remaining soldiers keep firing, and one's eyes fill with tears as despair spreads. But he keeps shooting, screaming for every monster to be wiped out. The protagonist charges in with his flame-wrapped spear, still attacking despite his exhaustion. He asks if they can still hold them off, saying he'll cover that side, and tells everyone to fall back for now. The soldiers end up all dead. Joe watches, furious, thinking damn them all. More monsters approach from above, and Yi attacks, causing a massive explosion and shouting for them to be wiped out once and for all. A loud sound echoes and a door opens. Something begins to emerge. It's a massive rotary cannon. Someone calls for the vice captain. It's the man from the defense room, saying the guardian cannon is fully charged. The monsters keep advancing, and Eileen orders them to open fire. The cannons unleash a relentless barrage toward the creatures, triggering massive explosions and shredding them to pieces. The protagonist watches as the explosions continue non-stop, until everything finally falls silent and the smoke clears. Ahead, nothing remains. Joe keeps watching and says most of them have been wiped out and the survivors have fled. Eileen explains that the cannon can annihilate entire groups, but it needs time to recharge before each shot. Normally, when an abyssal breach of Class A occurs, energy spikes are detected weeks in advance, giving them time to prepare near possible entry points. But this time, Yi listens carefully as she continues, this time there was no warning at all. The protagonist looks at her, rests a hand on her shoulder, and tells her it's not her fault. Eileen, crying, replies that she knows, but it's just hard to accept. Suddenly, an attack approaches. They look immediately, and something is coming toward them, raising dust and making a deafening noise. It's a gigantic monster with multiple tails, one of which swings toward the cannon. The protagonist thinks there's no way that can happen, but the creature hits the cannon, destroying everything around it. Joe starts to fall, and when he looks to the side, he sees his partner falling too. Yi stretches out his elongated monkey-like arms and manages to grab her, while using his other hand to cling to the cliff, still keeping Eileen safe with his massive arm. She looks at him in shock, saying all the trucks were wiped out in an instant, completely annihilated. The protagonist, looking ahead, asks what the hell is that thing? The monster roars, and both say they can't let it destroy the wall. The two leap toward the creature, using their abilities and weapons, striking together, but they don't even leave a scratch. Joe wonders if the beast even felt the hit. He jumps onto it, saying that if its hide is tougher than steel, then he'll strike the eyes instead. A bright light flashes, but Yi can't pierce the creature's eyes and looks confused. The monster thrashes violently, throwing him off, and continues demolishing everything around it with its enormous jaws. The protagonist watches as the surrounding pressure becomes overwhelming. Furious, Eileen curses, saying at this rate the wall will collapse. The beast unleashes a powerful burst of energy, opens its massive jaws and charges at them. Suddenly, someone's eyes widen. Jets of plasma start firing. Someone is on top of the monster, attacking it. The two partners stare in shock as a figure stands ahead, wielding his weapon. It's Captain Ling Xiao of the Extermination Squad. They're stunned, and the protagonist asks if that old guy is the captain. The vice captain explains that he's her squad leader, the head of the first squadron, second only to Commander Corey and the entire extermination force. She adds that his appearance is due to his ability to manipulate plasma in combat, and years of constant battle have left him chronically anemic. Plasma begins to rise. The captain clenches his fist and summons multiple hands of energy, which start pounding the beast relentlessly. Joe watches in awe. The creature groans in pain as plasma flows over its body, but suddenly it grins and lashes out with its many tails, slamming into someone and creating a massive shockwave. Yi comments that the attack is strong enough to crack the city wall, and Eileen tells him to relax. After the impact, the captain blocks the strike with his weapon, and the vice captain says something like that won't affect him. Ling snaps his finger, and the blow transforms into another force that smashes the monster into the ground, pinning it down. The captain wipes the plasma from his mouth and says that for those buried here, fear, rage, and sorrow, he's heard them all. A bright light erupts as Ling continues channeling plasma, saying that with their remains, he'll finish this beast. The creature roars, and the captain strikes it with his devastating power. The two partners watch in awe. The monster is defeated. It opens its mouth, and Ling easily cleaves it in half with his sword. The protagonist is amazed, thinking that the pressure alone is terrifying. So this is the power of the first squadron's captain. Ling coughs, looks to the side, and says he's proud of everyone, because not a single soul wavered in the end. Even now, the plasma still burns with fighting spirit. Eileen remarks that maybe he should stop the bleeding first, and the captain replies that he just got fired up after the warm-up. He asks where the bandages are and says this grudge will only be settled once they take down the Abyssal Lord. The vice captain answers that she brought some with her. Joe thinks there's no time to relax. Even though he's evolved a lot since his return, he's still far from reaching a captain-class Awakener's level. Yi looks up and sees aircraft flying overhead, carrying something he doesn't quite understand. Then something opens and descends. It's Ze inside a mech, saying that from here on, they can leave the technology to him. He explains that the entire defense system of Minghai City was built using his group's technology, and by dawn, the repair drones will have the walls operational again. A voice comments that it's impressive, and the protagonist says that compared to this kind of advanced technology, the old outpost felt like a primitive village. It's no wonder everyone wants to move to Minghai. The captain reports that the commander wants him, Eileen, and Zhe to report to the Supreme Council. Joe argues that the wall won't be repaired anytime soon, and if they all leave, the monsters could return. Ling replies that he's staying, one more or less won't make a difference, and says he hopes the monsters do come, he could use them. In Minghai City, inside the Parliament building, Zhe reports that, in the end, the first squadron's captain arrived in time and defeated the unknown giant creature. At the moment, the Zhang Group's repair robots are fixing the collapsed section. That concludes the report. Eileen steps forward and confirms that the report has been finalized. Rhodes watches with a stern expression, while Siwei, president of the Zhang Group and head of the Zhang family, declares that the main cause of the Minghai City breach during the Abyssal invasion was the deliberate sabotage of the energy core, which prevented the activation of the 3 defense layers in time. Eileen's report confirms that once power was restored, the defenses held up well, and Siwei proposes that the council launch a full investigation. Jen says the intelligence department will handle the investigation but believes there's a more pressing issue. He questions whether they realize they can't just blame themselves and try to cover it up, when suddenly a voice interrupts him. It's Taisia Yusur, head of the Yusur family and high priestess of the Esper Church. She asserts that the top priority right now is to deal with the unexpected emergence of this Class A abyss, and asks the commander when the Abyss Suppression Squad will be deployed. Corey responds that the extermination force and elite fighters from each faction are already assembled, but there's been an incident. A message arrived just before the meeting. They watch a video showing an extreme class monster and someone crying for help. It's Research Facility 12. It's under attack by monsters. The protagonist asks about that facility, and Eileen explains that it's the Zhong Group's most secret one. Zhe's sister is its director, and not even he has clearance to know what's being researched there. Zhe thinks of his sister, and Zhou questions why something that important isn't even located inside the city. The vice captain answers that it was supposed to be, but the council rejected the plan. Citing security risks related to advanced technology, they were forced to relocate it outside the walls. Yi remarks that this sounds like a deliberate setup, and Jay asks if they've been evacuated and whether his sister is safe. Virion says no distress signal was received, and nearly everyone inside is still trapped. Therefore, he proposes delaying the Abyss Suppression Squad's deployment and sending a rescue mission to Facility 12 under the captain's command first. Taisia firmly objects. The church senses the energy within the Abyss growing stronger, and if they don't eliminate the Lord soon, things will spiral out of control. Corey says to let Captain Pharaoh of the 2nd Squadron handle the rescue. The suppression squad must proceed as planned. Ting protests, saying that won't work. The current squad doesn't meet the minimum requirement of 10 Level 1 Awakeners needed to enter a Class A Abyss. Even with him leading personally, every single Level 1 in the squad is essential for defeating the Abyssal Lord in the first assault. Seaway demands to know if that's how it's going to be, reminding them that they were the ones who forced Facility 12 out of the city back then, and now they'll just turn their backs and let everyone there die? Rhodes insists that the highest priority now is to eliminate the Abyssal Lord. The longer they wait, the greater the danger to Minghai City. The decision is made. The suppression squad will proceed as planned. He thinks to himself that Joe is a fool. He refused to merge with the Olaf family before and now expects their support. Corey silently reflects that this noble speech is just a cover. Rhodes only wants to use this chance to crush the Zhong family. Even now, they're still scheming against each other. The protagonist says that now he gets it. None of them ever planned to help. Everyone falls silent and Joe declares that he'll go alone. Elsewhere, an aircraft flies toward a massive pit radiating overwhelming, terrifying energy. The vice captain says that this time, including herself, all combat units of the extermination force are mobilizing for abyss suppression, meaning he'll have to lead the rescue team to Facility 12 alone, with no additional support. Yi, eyes closed, remembers being in that same meeting room earlier when Rhodes said the Supreme Defense Council had rejected the rescue operation. All members of the extermination force were to join the abyss suppression team instead. Back then, the protagonist apologized, saying he wasn't yet an official member of the extermination force, that he was volunteering to rescue Research Facility 12, and that his opinion didn't count. In the present, Joe thinks Commander Corey already risked the Council's wrath just to help them get through and avoid the monsters still roaming the surface. That alone is a great favor. A voice then says that his members are volunteering too, and Yi realizes Zhe is worried about his sister's safety. The two competitors who had doubted his skill during the first competition, along with Lu, whom he met during Abyss training, also join. Joe warns that this mission is nothing like defending Minghai City, and they don't even know how dangerous it will be. The warrior replies that they're with him all the way. Lu adds that Joe saved his life, and he still owes him a debt of gratitude. A voice announces they're approaching the drop zone and orders the rescue team to prepare for deployment. The protagonist thanks everyone for trusting him, says there's not much more to add, and orders the team to move out. The aircraft begins its descent. A hatch opens and a vehicle rolls out. Joe is inside when someone calls to him. It's Zhe, who says that right before they departed, his father told him that no matter how this ends, his only regret is not being strong enough to rescue his daughter himself. He's already saved them twice, both times in their darkest moments, and the Zhong family will never forget his kindness. Yi replies that he knows what it's like to be trapped, waiting for someone to come and save you, and that if he doesn't help when he can, he'll regret it later. He just wants to stay true to himself. He tells them to stop calling him benefactor. People might think he's an old man. He's not much older than they are, and says they can call him bro. Later, explosions shake the area. They stop the vehicle and get out. The protagonist notes that it looks like the monsters attacked there, with the same force they used against Minghai City, and wonders if they arrived too late. Then something groans beneath the rubble. It sounds human. Joe rushes over immediately. There's a person trapped under the rocks, badly wounded. Ji tells him to hold on, that they're here to help. Suddenly, Yi senses something and warns his partner to be careful. A blast of energy shoots toward Zhe, and a monster manifests. Ji realizes it was lying in wait for them to approach so it could strike. He gets trapped along with the injured man, who begs them to kill him. Zhou asks if he was being used as bait. Someone moves quickly, it's the protagonist slashing at the monster, but it regenerates and grabs Zhou. Zhou analyzes it and the system identifies the creature as a juvenile fluid Goliath. The fluid Goliath's body is entirely composed of liquid. Cutting it doesn't cause real damage. Yi says physical attacks won't work. It has to be destroyed by hitting its crystal core near the shoulder. Ji says he can't see the weak point. The young master clenches his fist, gathers mana, and says he'll just freeze it completely. Ice bursts forth, and the crystal core is sliced in half. Afterwards, still at the same site, Zhe manages to save himself and kill the monster, also freeing the survivor who is badly injured. The man says he saw him at last week's meeting, and now, out of nowhere, they meet again. The protagonist says that back when he lived at the outpost, food hunting teams never returned fully intact. That's what the apocalypse looks like. Lu calls to him, saying there are no other signs of survivors nearby. They've tried all communication frequencies, but no one's answering. He asks if there's really no one else alive. The young master starts crying and says the main structure of the underground research facility and its defense systems aren't functioning. His sister and the others must still be somewhere below. A bright light flashes. They look up, startled, to see more monsters approaching. Ji rushes toward one, freezes its core, and punches it apart. The other warriors watch. More monsters appear. Lu raises his staff and releases his magic. One of the monsters charges at them. Then something moves around the three fighters, pulling them away. It's the protagonist, yanking them clear of the attack. There are too many monsters. Ji falls to his knees, crying for his sister and asking if she can hear him. Then the young master suddenly perks up, grabs his phone excitedly, and in a room somewhere, a screen lights up. His sister speaks through it, telling him to listen carefully. They have to distract the monsters first. It's Zhong Yi. The monsters surround the adventurers. The protagonist senses something coming. Ji runs to them, shouting for everyone to follow him as his sister guides him on where to go. They all keep running behind him until they spot a massive stone gate. The young master races toward it. They slip inside quickly and seal the door. The monsters try to break in but can't. Inside the chamber, they breathe a sigh of relief. Then they see a giant screen displaying Zhong Yi's face. Zhe, overjoyed, exclaims that she's alive, thank God. He thought it was too late. Zhong Yi says they made it. She created a crystal capable of continuous growth. The protagonist apologizes and interrupts for a moment, asking if someone can explain exactly what's happening here. Zhong Yi apologizes, saying that seeing her brother made her lose composure. She explains that after the invasion began, they didn't have time to evacuate. The facility was surrounded by monsters. When they emerged from the abyss, they came straight there and have been trying non-stop to break into the lower levels. She believes all of these creatures are minions summoned by him. Lu asks if they were experimenting on live monsters there. Zhong Yi explains that currently, awakeners can only grow stronger by acquiring crystals from higher-level monsters. But once their own power surpasses that of the crystal's original monster, they can no longer draw out its full strength. Fluid Goliaths devour each other, evolving from weak to strong, and they use that trait to create a crystal that grows together with its bearer's power. Zhe asks if she really succeeded, and Zhong Yi confirms, saying that from now on, everyone can carry a crystal that allows them to unlock their full potential. However, there's one drawback. Unlike using a high-level monster crystal, this method doesn't grant an instant power boost. The protagonist tells her to wait. He admits he should be congratulating her. But the reality is that they can't fight their way through the main entrance to get the rest of the people out, and asks if there's any other way. Zhong Yi tells them to forget about her. She presses a button and says that place is lost. She'll guide them to the internal database, and they need to extract the research data. Zhe demands to know what she means and asks if she wants him to just stand by and watch her die. Zhong Yi answers that the growing crystal technology is more important than any of them. A voice says he refuses. It's Yi, declaring that unless she has a better plan, he'll storm the place himself if that's what it takes. Zhong Yi, moved, says there is one option. Each underground level has a rail transport system for moving supplies. The tunnels are sealed, so they're still intact for now and can be used for evacuation. But the central control room was destroyed, the tracks have no power, and he'll need to restore the surface power station first. They'll also have to open the main gate leading toward Minghai City, but opening it will make a huge noise and attract every nearby monster. Whoever opens it won't make it back. Zhong Yi warns it's too dangerous. The protagonist says they'll stick together. Head for the transport tracks now. Let Zhang restore the power and he'll handle the gate. It's all set. At the power station, the warriors ask what the hell those things are. Ji tells the two to follow his instructions. When they see a light turn on, press the button next to it. The young master manipulates several controls, puts on a headset, and orders them to connect it to the system. Power will be restored in 600 seconds, and asks what their status is. On the other end, the protagonist and Lu are running toward the gate. Zhou, also wearing a headset, reports that they've reached it. They'll definitely be there before the power comes back online. Zhe tells him that once the energy's up, he'll have 30 seconds to open the gate. If it doesn't open in time, the transport vehicle won't make it through. He must move fast, get everyone on board, grab the files in that case too, and copy the recordings of the final experiment. One of the subordinates reports that all the wounded have been loaded onto the transport. Zhongyi says she's ready as well and orders everyone to board now. Anything not packed stays behind. The subordinates rush to obey and Zhongyi urges them to hurry. With 10 seconds left, Ji asks if everyone's aboard. The protagonist confirms the gate is ready. Zhongyi says the transport is in position and the young master announces the power's back. A noise rings out and the lights flicker to life. Zhongyi declares that power has been restored to the underground station. Then the young man glances to the side and says, "They're coming." The monsters close in together. Zhongyi tells everyone to hold on tight. She presses a button and the pressure rises. A bright light flashes as the intensity increases. The people below brace themselves as an explosion shakes the tunnels, but the monsters keep advancing. The young man yells to push faster. The train speeds up and Zhongyi says they're gaining on them. The engine's already at full power. The monsters open their massive jaws and an explosion of fire erupts. The man inside the train stares in horror. A cannon begins firing relentlessly at the monster, blasting it apart, controlled by Zhe from the defense tower. The passengers inside the train feel a wave of relief, believing they're safe now. Then a warning sounds. Gate signal not detected. Zhongyi wonders what's happening with the gate. It's struggling to open. The protagonist shouts that it's malfunctioning. If it doesn't open in time, the whole plan is ruined. Zhongyi suits up in armor and steps outside. Ji demands to know what she's doing, and Zhongyi tells him to stay out of it, focus on the transport and bring everyone back safely. She jumps off the train, thinking that at this point she has to open the lowest underground level and let the master of monsters lure them away. Then someone approaches. The young master announces that the transport vehicle is arriving. They leap onto the train and climb inside. Inside, Zhe lights up at the sight of his sister, exclaiming that she made it, thank God. Zhongyi snaps at him to stop because the gate still isn't open. On the other side, Lu checks the mechanism and says the hydraulic system is broken. Zhe replies there's no time. If everything fails, they'll have to abandon the transport. Zhongyi refuses, saying no, this place is crawling with monsters. If they leave the transport, they'll be surrounded and torn apart. The vehicle is their only safe way back to the city. The protagonist strains to open the gate using his massive simian arm, pushing with all his might. Lu says the captain intends to push it open, but the older man shouts that the gate requires 4 hydraulic presses of 10,000 tons to move. It's impossible for a human. Yi keeps pushing and wonders if even with his giant monkey arm he still can't move it. Then thinks that if that's the case, he'll just turn his whole body into a gate-opening machine. The protagonist stretches out his hand and activates his sticky tongue, deciding to use it first to pull forward with extra tension. The system notifies venomous spider stinger activated and Joe thinks that he'll use the iron to anchor his legs to the ground. More notifications come. Elastic muscle activated. Yi keeps forcing the gate open no matter what. Another alert. Severe muscle rupture detected. Beginning repair process. Lu watches in shock as the protagonist keeps pushing, focusing every ounce of energy into his elastic muscles, all or nothing, and screams for it to move already. Gradually, the gate begins to open. Lu shouts that it's moving. Everyone stares in disbelief, and Zhongyi asks if that insane plan actually worked. Zhou yells to give him 3 more minutes, then changes his mind saying 2 will be enough. But something approaches. It's the monster, charging straight toward him. Yi growls in frustration, asking why now of all times, thinking he has nothing useful left to deal with it. Jay asks if they can wait when suddenly the young master notices something. Lu unleashes her magic at the monsters, saying every creature nearby is heading their way. There are too many of them. While the protagonist keeps forcing the gate, the monsters continue to attack. Zhongyi says they'll release the underground monster lord to drive them back, telling them to hold on and open the gate before the train arrives. One of the creatures lunges toward Yi's face, trying to devour him. The train rumbles closer and the warrior tells the young master to look. They can already see the gate, but they might not make it. Ji says they're running at half speed, and if they slow down anymore, it's over. Suddenly, noises echo from above and the old man yells that they're on the roof. The monsters are on top of the train and the young master realizes there's no other way, they have to accelerate. Jay slams a button and the monsters slip off. The man looks out the window and says he doesn't see them. It should have shaken them loose. But the monsters close in again, grab him, and drag him away. The others watch in horror, shouting his name. Then the monster appears in front of them. The old man glances at Zhe, suits up his armor, and charges forward. The young master tries to stop him, but the veteran goes anyway, straight toward the beast. He leaps and his armor blares a warning, danger detected. An explosion erupts, and Jay breaks down in tears. Lu tries to fight the monster as the protagonist is being swallowed. The young master shouts, "Damn you!" A deafening sound fills the air, everyone covers their ears, and the warrior asks what's happening. Zhe looks and sees all the monsters retreating toward the main building, ordering everyone to forget the outside for now. The brakes are failing, and they can't slow down. One man says they need to jump or they'll crash, but the young master argues that jumping at top speed is no different from hitting the wall, even if they survive. What about the others on board? The whole train depends on him. The protagonist keeps forcing the gate open as the others cheer him on, shouting that he can do it. Joe yells for him to get clear of the gate. The pressure peaks, and Yi finally pries it open, then immediately leaps aside as the train rushes through. Jae and his companion cheer in relief. Then someone moves. It's Lu, and the young master asks why she isn't getting in. The protagonist tells him to take everyone back to the city first. He's going to save Jae's sister no matter what. The train departs, and in the underground lab, Jong-yi says that all the fluid Goliaths are outside now, probably drawn by that. The monster watches and charges toward the larger beast. Jong-yi frowns in confusion, wondering if they're going to attack the archbeast. But when the larger creature touches the others, it begins absorbing them, its power and size swelling. Jong-yi realizes the truth. It's not that the monsters are leaving, the archbeast is devouring them all. It's using some kind of lure to draw them in. She watches as they struggle, asking if they truly consume their own kind to grow stronger only to challenge their master afterward. The smaller beasts attempt to escape, one managing to pull away for a moment, but the larger one notices and drags it back, reabsorbing it into its body. A blinding light bursts out and Jong-yi shields her eyes. The glow intensifies and she can't comprehend what's happening until they merge into one. Shocked, she watches as the fused monster takes on a humanoid form. She murmurs that this must be a new evolution, an undocumented stage of the fluid Goliath, and hopes someone recovers this recording someday. She presses a button, activating cannons that rise from the floor and release a thick mist, thinking she must find a way to handle it. Cracks form along the monster's legs. It looks down, confused, just as a piece of its foot shatters. Yet it regenerates instantly, leaving Jong-yi stunned. It's completely unharmed. Then an ice shard strikes it, and the monster sneers, saying that it understands now humans use energy. It crushes the frozen shard effortlessly, and Jong-yi, even more alarmed, wonders if even the freezing ray has no effect. She keeps firing, but the creature regenerates again and again, leading her to realize it's absorbing the attacks. It's evolving constantly. The new stage of the Goliath can adapt to enemy strikes, developing resistance on the fly. The monster glares at her, stretching its massive arm toward her, seizing her in its grip. It growls that she's the one who locked it away. In its current form, it wonders aloud what will happen if it devours a human, and vows to savor every bite. Energy surges around her, and Jong-yi squeezes her eyes shut until something slams into the monster. It looks aside and sees the protagonist, who has just snatched her up in his arms, pulling her away with a grin. Jong-yi demands to know if he's stupid, shouting that if she had just died, he might have survived. Now they'll both be killed. Joe answers that he hates those self-sacrifice plans meant to save the world, and that he became stronger precisely so he'd never have to see that happen again. Jong-yi fires back, calling him a ridiculous fool. The monster snarls that it's had enough, and they both turn toward it. Yi asks if that thing is the monster leader, why it's so small, and what happened to all the others. Jong-yi replies that it devoured them. The creature growls that she truly was the one in charge, the one who imprisoned it there, torturing it day and night. Even when it begged, they laughed, treating its pain as entertainment. Now it's her turn to feel that suffering. The protagonist frowns, remarking that perhaps the research methods had gone too far. Jong-yi answers that it possesses a magic core capable of infinite evolution. Joe smirks, saying that's fine. Monsters have already turned the world into a wasteland, so what's wrong with asking them to contribute to human science? The creature roars that humans truly deserve extinction. It thrusts its arm forward, striking Yi and slamming him into the wall. Then it grabs him, extends its limb, and hurls him into the air. The protagonist coughs plasma and widens his eyes as the monster attacks again, punching him hard in the stomach and sending him crashing to the ground with a massive impact. Jong-yi watches in fear. The smoke clears, the monster scans the room, and Joe is still alive, thinking he didn't expect something so small to have such devastating power. The system alerts, absorbs all the strength of whatever it devours. Yi analyzes quickly, realizing that as long as he can see its weak point, there's nothing to fear. The creature stretches out both arms, pulling at his. The cockroach god inside him tells him to evolve continuously to adapt to enemy attacks. The protagonist grits his teeth, shouting that he should have said that earlier. The monster laughs as it crushes his arm, but Joe channels his strength and breaks free, counterattacking. The creature stares in disbelief, muttering that it's impossible. The system notifies corrosive blade activated, evolution of traits, mantis scythe plus corrosive mucus. Flames erupt, followed by another alert, evolution of traits, mantis scythe plus fused core. Yi strikes. The monster roars and counters with a massive punch. Both charge impacts collide violently, and Jong-yi shields her face. The system alerts again. Trait activated. Stinger carapace. Venomous spider tail injects paralytic toxin on contact. The monster doesn't understand what's happening until it's suddenly thrown back, and Zhongyi stares in shock, thinking she said he was a rare-type metamorph, yet now he looks like a monster himself. Zhou closes in on the opponent again, striking with his flaming spear, causing a massive explosion, but Yi's eyes widen when he sees the enemy emerge completely unharmed. The creature grins and says that time is running out, no more delays. The protagonist realizes it's evolving too fast, that just a few hits are already enough for it to resist the fused blade. Arrows whistle through the air, striking the beast. The monster turns, confused, and sees Zhongyi holding a bow. "So you're with him," it growls. Zhou looks over, surprised, as the beast extends its arm toward her. But Zhongyi reacts instantly, firing another arrow straight into its hand. Then, in a blur, the monster's arm is severed by Yi's attack, and it roars in pain. Zhongyi remarks that combining multiple power types at once really does work. The monster laughs, saying humans stole divine power, always clinging to strength that was never theirs. Raising two fingers, it says that's their greatest weakness. Zhongyi curses under her breath, realizing that the Goliath's most dangerous trait is its ability to emit a synchronized harmonic wave. Any magic crystal caught in it generates a dampening field on its surface, completely neutralizing energy release. She tells Zhou that this is their chance. She fires another arrow, but it passes straight through. Zhongyi gasps as the monster releases another surge of energy, waves rippling toward them. She looks at her bow as the light fades from it, stunned. The monster laughs darkly, saying that a human without a crystal core is nothing more than an insect waiting to be crushed. Zhongyi crouches low, frustrated, thinking she was too slow. Its power completely counters human awakeners. There's nothing they can do to stop it now. The creature smirks, saying the look on her face is perfect, and that it'll melt her slowly, making sure she screams. Then something slams into its face. The monster screams in pain as the protagonist charges again, slamming it to the ground. The creature stares, confused. Zhou faces it silently, and the monster asks how it's possible, how he's still fighting completely unarmed. Yi doesn't answer, saying nothing at all. Zhongyi watches, bewildered, wondering if he can actually use abilities without a crystal. The monster steadies itself, snarling that they're all damned. Its body swells as it mocks him for being alone now, asking what he can possibly do, saying it'll show him what it's like to give everything and still be useless. The protagonist grins, thanking it for the reminder, then summons the Fat One and orders it to attack. A blinding light bursts through the chamber. The Fat One lands heavily, its massive form shaking the ground. Zhongyi, stunned, whispers, "What is that? Did he just summon a boss-level creature?" The Guardian kneels before its master. The monster stares in disbelief, demanding to know why it's there. Yi realizes that the horned warlord from the Hidden Realm truly had a name, and wonders if there's a connection between them. The Guardian releases a surge of power and strikes, its pressure distorting the air. The beast snarls that they've betrayed it, that he's nothing but a dog to humans now. The two face each other, and the Fat One releases another burst of power. The beast conjures a weapon and charges. Their impacts collide violently. Zhongyi watches, thinking she's never seen a monster like this before, wondering if Zhou is actually controlling the evolved Goliath and who he really is. Is he even human? That thing follows him, willingly? The two creatures clash together, each unleashing their respective powers while Yi and Zhongyi watch. The protagonist stretches out his arm to block a blow and asks if she's okay. Zhongyi smiles darkly, and Zhou, unnerved, asks why she's looking at him like that, saying it's starting to scare him. She replies that after this, she wants him to let her study him, perform a full medical examination. Yi thinks to himself that she's a true researcher, and that his secret has been completely exposed. The protagonist hesitates, unsure what to say. Zhongyi tells him there's no point lying now, she'll keep the secret, just focus on bringing the Goliath down and she'll find a place to hide. The two continue fighting as the beast laughs, asking, what's this talk about bringing it down, and if they're underestimating it? Even if both attack together, it says, as long as it switches resistances fast enough, none of their attacks will land. The Fat One growls that this guy just won't break. Something's off. And Zhou replies by asking who said it only had one characteristic. He unleashes several tentacles with different attributes. The hunter spider's venom, fire and the lightning of the horned beast's spike, the corrosive acid of the frog's mucus. His body holds more characteristics than anyone could count. The opponent is horrified, saying it is impossible, and asks how a human can possess that kind of power. Zhou closes in to attack and unleashes many intense flames in its direction, causing a huge noise and a tremendous explosion. The monster screams, and Zhong covers her face because of the intense pressure and tells him to be careful. The smoke clears and Zhong watches. Plasma drips onto the ground, and the monster has driven a sharp ice arm through Yi's body, saying that as long as it eliminates him, it still has a chance to win, until the monster's head is torn off. Even with a huge wound, the protagonist still manages to decapitate it and says that it forgot to go easy, and that he also has a cockroach trait, immortal and indestructible. The monster's head falls to the ground and it calls him a bastard, saying that this was not how it was supposed to end. Joe keeps watching. Jong watches him and thinks there is something very wrong with him. Fatty runs over to hug him. Yi walks over to the monster's head, touches it, and thinks that if he could obtain that ability to deactivate magic cores, he would become unstoppable. The protagonist swallows a piece of it and the system issues a warning. A particle begins to manifest throughout his entire body, covering him completely. The next day, the rescue mission is successful and everyone is in the private room. Joe is lying on the stretcher with ice particles all over his body. Eileen asks what happened to him, and Jong replies that his vital signs are unstable, that he should regain consciousness soon. But there is something she needs to say right now. This guy is not human. The two look at her in shock, and the doctor says that he may look like them, speak like them, and think like them, but his DNA is completely different from that of a human, and she believes he assumed this form only to blend into human society. Eileen keeps watching him. Yi wakes up and thinks that it is so noisy and wonders where he is. The cockroach god says that he absorbed the crystal core, but it was packed with conflicting characteristics. This is the first time it has ever seen something like that. His body is showing signs of rejection, and even so, he should not worry, because the side effects should pass soon. Eileen approaches him, and Jong says they have already detected dozens of monster traits in his system, including traits from the evolved Goliath. If he gains the ability to nullify nearby magic cores, he will become a huge threat to humanity. Before he regains consciousness, this may be their last chance. Eileen asks what she is implying and whether she is planning to lock him up somewhere. The researcher lowers her head and replies that no, but he is even more dangerous than the evolved Goliath, and the best solution is to eliminate the threat completely. Ja says he will not allow it, and even if she is his sister, she must not dare lay a hand on his brother. The researcher says he has saved the Jong family more than once, and that is the only reason why she called only the two of them there, because if this gets out, he will be hunted down and finished. Eileen says she will not allow that he has been fighting monsters since the moment he arrived in the city, and she believes he is on their side. Ji says that even if Big Brother is a monster, asks whether he cannot be a good monster. The two of them shout at him to be quiet. The protagonist wonders if they are debating how to deal with him. Jung asks how they know that helping them is not just part of his game, and tells them not to forget that when they first discovered the fluid Goliath, they also thought it was harmless, and look what happened. After it grew, it called its species, and they attacked the base. The children who took care of it lost their lives. Even though it was raised by humans, it destroyed the second largest fortress outside Narum. If they let him live, and he turns out to be an enemy, tens of thousands of lives in this city would be taken just because they hesitated. And he is a monster. Eileen's eyes fill with tears, and she remembers every moment with him defeating monsters and giving everything he had to eliminate them, and she thinks that he will not turn against them and tells her to do it. Jung smiles and presses the button. The machine moves toward him, releasing a light. The researcher keeps watching him and remembering the moments she shared with him, especially when he came back just to save her life, and she thinks that even so, he is not human, and wonders whether she can really trust him. The machine keeps approaching until Jung presses the button again to stop it. Eileen tells her to remember that he helped Ja defeat Tony in the tournament, that he held the wall when they were surrounded by monsters, and that when everyone refused to go to the research laboratory, he was the one who rescued her, and she is afraid that one day he may become an enemy, but without him, she would not even be alive to talk about her doubts. The Jung Yi they know never asks for advice after making a decision, and if she really wanted him finished, she asks why she told the others and says she can simply admit that deep down she does not want to eliminate him either. Jay steps in front of her and begs her not to do it. The researcher stares at the control for a while and throws it to the ground. Jay gets very excited and Eileen feels relieved, and the two thank her. The protagonist gets up and thanks her for choosing to trust him, and Eileen asks since when he has been awake, and Joe replies that he woke up when she started arguing. Yi looks at the researcher and says he cannot explain everything right now, but asks them to believe him because he will never betray their trust. Eileen says no one can know what is hidden inside his body and that from now on, the four of them are accomplices. Then the phone rings and a voice says that something happened and tells her to report to the hospital. At the hospital in the hallway, the four of them arrive running, and the protagonist looks on attentively. Several people are on the floor, injured and in great pain, and two young men are talking about the bandages that need to be changed. The vice captain wonders why the wounded members of the massacre squad are all in the lobby and where the doctors are. Then, a soldier comes out of a room calling for a doctor and with only a scratch on his face says that his face is leaking a lot of plasma and hurting badly. The nurse says she will treat him immediately and tells the patient next to him to lie down, because if he keeps moving, but the patient cuts her off and tells her to shut up. Meanwhile, in one room, four soldiers are playing cards. and the protagonist thinks that all the doctors are treating the military and wonders whether they are going to leave the wounded members of the massacre squad there until they die. Joe looks to the side and sees a soldier pulling up the shirt of an extremely injured patient and asking who gave him permission to use the supplies, saying that all medical equipment is under military jurisdiction and that distribution is managed by the city defense forces, asking whether he did not know that. Yi grows furious when he sees that situation, and the researcher says those supplies were provided by the Zhong family to support the extermination squad, but the soldier replies that he does not care where they came from, because if they are there, then the city defense forces have the right to requisition them. The boy gets angry, draws his sword, and with only one arm says that he will fight him to the death. And the soldier asks what he is doing when the protagonist suddenly appears behind him and strikes him, sending him flying. The young man carrying the box is shocked. Joe steps in front of him, takes the box and gives it to the people who actually need it. And the wounded soldier asks whether the extermination squad is trying to rebel. And Yi says that he is not even part of the extermination squad. He is just a passerby who does not like his face, but someone grabs his arm. The protagonist looks over and realizes it is another soldier, the Major General, and the general squeezes his arm with all his strength as the system warns. Comminuted fracture detected. The general moves forward, choking him. Eileen gets worried and runs over, but the researcher tells her not to do anything because they are provoking them, and the moment someone from the squad reacts, everything will explode. The general says that assaulting a soldier on duty in a military-controlled zone is grounds for a charge of insurrection, and declares that he is under arrest. Meanwhile, at the Supreme Defense Council of Narumi City, a voice says that in the city's last defense, 2/3 of the districts were damaged. The casualties in the extermination squad exceeded half, and the military. Someone slams a hand on the table and says, "That is enough." It is Rhodes, who says everyone has already seen the numbers and that they should stop wasting time. The Abyss crisis is over, and he proposes resuming the selection tournament. Everyone watches in silence, and Rhodes thinks that the team's losses are heavy, which makes this a perfect opportunity to integrate city defense personnel into all the ranks, allowing them to be controlled from the very beginning. Corey stares at Rhodes, who asks for the second round to be scheduled for tomorrow. Haley questions this and says that many competitors are still injured and waiting for treatment, and that not a single military representative even went to the front line, asking what he thinks this is. Rhodes looks irritated but says nothing. Corey signals for her to be quiet and says that is enough. Rhodes states that since no one is taking a position, the round will be conducted by the city defense forces, with Major General Tabbitt serving as the examiner for the second round. A soldier says that this is the man who humiliated his beloved student in front of all Narumi City. In the military prison, in the interrogation room, several young men are tied up with ropes, and the protagonist is one of them, hanging upside down. And the general says he does not want any of those people participating in the tournament again and asks whether he understands. Joe thinks that they only brought competitors who do not represent the four families and realizes that they are planning something. The soldiers approach with a spiked baton. Yi calls out to them, and when the soldier looks at him, the protagonist tells him to untie him if he has the courage, claiming that he will defeat all of them by himself, and thinks that with his immortal trait, he can heal quickly, but the other injured men could be beaten to death. The soldiers say he is very confident and order them to take him down. Joe is thrown to the ground and the soldier strikes him with the spiked baton, starting to beat him without stopping, spraying plasma everywhere. Yi is covered in plasma, and the soldier asks whether he still thinks so highly of himself. And the cockroach god says to let them keep going, because Yi still has residual crystallization in his body and can use this to profit from them. And the protagonist, hanging there, asks whether he is swaying on an empty stomach and tells them to try hitting his face. The soldier grits his teeth and strikes his face several times, while the prisoners beside him think that he is risking his life for complete strangers like them and hope that he can hold on. The soldiers keep beating him, and Joe thinks that once again he was not strong enough, spits plasma into one of their faces, and the soldiers ask whether they should not just eliminate him. Yi is gravely injured and wonders whether he has scared them enough, saying that he cannot feel anything when a bright light suddenly bursts out. Everyone looks over, and Corey appears with his team after smashing through the wall. Eileen shouts for the commander and asks him to free them. Someone starts clapping, and the general says that, as expected of the commander, the strongest awakened, a single blow was enough to break through the prison's 36-layer alloy gate. He comments that people love to say the city defense forces are arrogant and presumptuous, but from his point of view, the extermination squad is not much better, since they assaulted soldiers and showed signs of sedition, so the arrests are legal and justified, and he asks whether Corey is there to demand an explanation. Corey stares at him. The general throws an arm around him and says that in any case, they already finished interrogating them, was all a misunderstanding, and as a courtesy, he can take them away. The two women watch, and the general steps back, announcing that he will be the examiner for the next round of the selection tournament, and that he has memorized everyone's face, hoping to see them tomorrow. especially Joe. That night, at the research institute inside the city, after the confrontation, all the wounded members of the extermination squad have been transferred to improvised infirmaries, and Eileen says that anything that does not fit can be stacked with the extra medicine there. She looks to the side and asks where Yo went, and the young man beside her replies that he saw him going to the roof. On the roof, the protagonist is punching a punching bag, and the vice captain watches while Joe keeps hitting it in anger and asks why the extermination squad is not seen as humanity's last hope, why they are treated like enemies. They risk their lives to defend the city and still get discarded like trash. Research on the Goliaths could make the Awakened stronger, but they would rather let the monsters destroy the Institute than allow them to bring those discoveries back. And he says that the selection tournament should serve to find strong, awakened fighters for the squad so they can recover what they lost, but it has turned into a game for the great families. Joe keeps punching the bag angrily until someone grabs his hand. It is Eileen. Yi looks at her, the vice captain stares too, and suddenly, Eileen kisses him on the cheek. The protagonist widens his eyes, gets embarrassed, and wonders if she really kissed him. Eileen asks if he's calmer now, but Joe hesitates to answer, still flustered, and the vice captain calls him out for a drink. Yi puts on his shirt and says he understands. Later at the bar, people are drinking, and the protagonist thinks about what happened earlier and wonders if she likes him, imagining that if she invites him to go to her house later, he should say yes. Eileen asks what he is daydreaming about and whether he even heard what she just said. Joe replies that he did and tells her to do what he himself said, and the vice captain says that he needs to withdraw from the tournament tomorrow. Yi is shocked and asks why he should withdraw, and Eileen says he was not paying attention at all, explaining that the military has always wanted to be Narumi's only armed force, that they changed the examiner on purpose and intend to torture him and anyone else who wants to join the squad until they can no longer compete at all because their goal is to swallow up the entire squad. The protagonist replies that this is exactly why he must not withdraw. Eileen slams her glass onto the table and asks if he still does not understand, saying that the extermination squad has no chance, that if they do not resist, they will be slowly devoured on the military's terms. But the moment they fight back, they will be labeled rebels and exterminated. Joe watches her. Later, still at the bar, the vice captain tells him to listen, but she is lying with her head on the counter, drunk, and ends up falling asleep. Yi watches her and wonders whether he should leave Narumi. He drinks some of the alcohol and thinks it tastes bitter. Someone approaches and asks if he has never tried it before. It is Corey. Eileen says that at the forward post, only the leaders were allowed to drink that. Corey asks for the usual and says one bottle will do, and the protagonist asks whether he thinks the squad still has hope. Virion asks how he feels in Narumi, and Joe replies that it feels nostalgic, like the world before the end. Corey says that the extermination squad exists to bring that life back for everyone, that as long as that idea exists, there will be people who share it and want to stand beside them. And he asks whether Joe shares that idea. Yi replies that of course he does. Virion smiles, the bartender brings the drink, Corey takes the bottle and says to put it on their tab, and the protagonist asks if he only came to enjoy himself. Virion laughs and says he is looking forward to Joe's performance tomorrow. The next day, inside the stadium, a voice announces to the brave citizens of Narum that under the leadership of the great speaker Olaf, they once again defeated the monsters that sought to destroy the city. And at this moment of triumph, the long-awaited selection tournament begins. People shout, and the announcer says he is about to introduce the examiner for the second round, but someone strikes him. It is the general, and everyone looks on excitedly. Tabit says that he is a soldier and does not care about useless talk, explains that the rule is simple. Whoever survives 3 minutes in the arena advances and asks who will go first. The protagonist watches from the stands. Lu asks if that is Tabit. Joe asks if she knows him, and Yao replies that he used to be the class instructor and, while still in his first year in the army, managed to kill Abyss Lords, a record never matched. An opponent enters the arena and charges with his weapon, but realizes too late that something is wrong and is attacked without even seeing where it came from. The general throws him away and says he forgot to mention that there are no limits in this round and that if anyone is afraid of losing their life, they should quit now. The people are shocked and ask if that is not too brutal, saying this round was supposed to show skill, and comment that they have never seen an examiner kill competitors. The next contestant runs in and thinks that he barely escaped from him yesterday. The arena is large, and if he can just last 3 minutes, but the general leaps and crushes his body, slamming him into the ground. Joe thinks that man is huge and still unbelievably fast. He closed 10 steps in the blink of an eye. There is no terrain to use and no one will last long. The only option is to dodge, and the next contestant is called. The candidate attacks Tibet and lands a hit, but does not leave even a scratch. The people say someone finally hit the general. Ji thinks that is only natural, and Tabit stares at the young man, destroys his armor with a single blow, and knocks him to the ground. Ji asks what just happened. Lu says Tabit reflects any damage he receives back onto the attacker, and Yi realizes that is how he was injured. And Jia asks what they are supposed to do now since they cannot hurt him and cannot run from him either. The next candidate enters and is a soldier. The Major General smiles and says he passes. The crowd is outraged and the protagonist feels his anger rising. Some say it is shameless, but soon fall silent when they notice the military in the front row and begin clapping out of fear. A loud noise echoes and Zhou watches angrily. Later, still in the same place, wounded candidates are carried away on stretchers. On one side, all the contestants who wanted to join the extermination squad are badly injured. On the other side, the military candidates look relaxed, and two young men do not know what to do. A voice announces that this is the last chance. Rhodes asks who still wants to join the city defense forces. The two young men watch in silence, and one of them thinks he has no choice and that for now, they can only… Then, the blonde kneels and kisses his feet. The soldier laughs and says he wagged his tail like a dog, and the bearded man says, "That is enough," and starts to leave. Rhodes looks at him, plasma splashes, and the contestant falls to the ground. The announcer calls the next candidate, Lu Yao. She steps forward, the soldiers watch her and call her a traitor, and Yao remembers Zhou telling her to be careful and thinks there is no longer any option to surrender. Lu enters the arena and the general says he did not expect her to still have the courage to stand before him. Yao tightens her grip on her weapon and the announcer signals the start. An overwhelming power is launched toward the general and hits him directly. Zhe gets excited, saying that was incredible speed, and asks how she is casting so fast. And the protagonist replies that from the moment she entered the arena, she had already begun charging the attack. The announcer says it was an unexpected opening and asks how Lu will deal with the examiner's damage reflection. And Lu realizes that nothing happened, and the general thinks she must know that as long as the attack does not make direct bodily contact, the reflection is not activated. The announcer says that Tabit is moving and asks whether she will be able to launch another powerful strike. And the general says an attack of that level used only once will not be enough to bring him down, and that it does not seem like she has any chance. Yao is confused when she sees plasma at his feet. An energy rises through his body, and he is paralyzed. And Lu asks if he thought she was preparing a second lightning strike, and reveals that she lured him there on purpose. The ground is covered with the plasma of the wounded contestants he knocked down. The lingering lightning is woven through that plasma. That is the real follow-up attack. The general says it is unbelievable there was a second layer to the plan, such powerful paralysis. And Yao says she does not need to defeat him, she only needs to last 2 more minutes, and the general remains paralyzed. The announcer says Lu's tactic was a success. Tabit strains to break free, and Lu says that chance at victory was built by every contestant he tortured in front of her. Their plasma and her lightning created an energy that binds him. Even with the strength of a squad captain, he will not be able to break out of that cage easily, and says that even if he frees himself from the restraints, she can help with that. The general says there is one thing he has always wanted to ask her face to face. He remembers that she was already a member of the squad and had a future, but chose to betray them, and asks why. Lu thinks talking is a waste of time and will only work to her advantage, but replies that fine, she will help him remember what he did. In the past, at the recruit training camp, Yao tells them to stop wasting time and move together, and one soldier asks who she thinks she is looking down on. They rush forward together until they notice something. Someone approaches and kicks one of them in the face. It is Shen Kei, Yao's friend, and Lu watches in surprise. Shen moves quickly and strikes the others, knocking another one to the ground, and Yao takes advantage of the opening and hits the last one from behind, defeating all 3. Lu breathes heavily. Kei holds out her hand and says there is only one evaluation left. They need to move forward together. Yao smiles and takes her hand. On a rainy day, in the final evaluation to advance to the elite squad, the two stand face to face as opponents. The general watches from afar and orders them to begin. They charge at each other, exchanging blows, but Lu stops attacking and watches Shen, realizing that she is faster and that she will lose. But Shen also stops attacking. Yao opens her eyes in confusion and sees her partner kneeling. Kei says she wins. Shen let her win on purpose. Tabit watches and throws a weapon near the two of them. They look at it and he says he is getting old and his memory is failing. That he forgot to mention one rule. The true condition to pass is to eliminate the opponent, something neither of them expected. The loser will never get another chance. Lu says she will never do that, and on the other side, 2 young men say they will not do it either and refuse, asking only to be allowed to leave. One of them is killed and the other begs to be spared, but he's also shot dead. Lu looks on in shock, and Shen asks why they are doing that, saying that even though they lost the final round, they were still warriors who fought to get there. The general orders them to obey or die. Lu thinks she will not let them lay another finger on her friend. The countdown begins, until someone picks up the weapon. It is Kei. She looks at her partner, smiles, and Yao is horrified, thinking maybe this is better. because Shen was always the one who should have won, and she would never have had the courage to pull the trigger. Shen points the weapon at her own head, and her last words are for Yao to live. Ke takes her own life, plasma splashes onto Lu, and she thinks they should have moved forward together. Yao stands frozen, watching. The general sighs and asks why she was the one who survived. In the present, Lu says that he destroyed the most precious person in her life, that he forced everyone into such a cruel rule and is worse than the monsters, and now she will take her revenge with her own hands. Yao raises her arm with something attached to it and says, "Soul Beast Resonance." Her appearance begins to change and a huge light bursts around her. The general watches as a barrier expands and a beast is summoned. And the announcer asks if that really is Soul Beast Resonance, explaining that, as everyone can see, the technique in which powerful awakened release the power of the monster contained in their weapons is called Soul Beast Resonance, causing their bodies to take on the form of the monster as a symbol of the power they have mastered. The protagonist watches closely, and in the VIP box, Eileen asks if the staff was forged from Electro's remains, saying that it is the monster Lord of an Abyss, and Corey confirms, explaining that for her to release a resonance with her current strength, the crystal must have extremely high affinity with the weapon, and even he cannot guarantee he would come out unharmed if he took that blow. If it hits Tabit, it will definitely injure him. The beast opens its huge mouth and releases tremendous power in his direction, causing a devastating impact, and the announcer says it is an incredible blow that Examiner Tabit is trapped by the contestant. The soldiers worry about the general, but Jez celebrates, and Lu wonders if her friend saw that, thinking that she has finally avenged her. The ground is completely destroyed after the attack and someone starts laughing. The people are outraged and shout for her to be careful because he is behind her. Tabit says it seems that since she left the barracks, she has been training seriously, but that she wasted her hidden card too easily. The general moves at high speed and the announcer asks what happened, saying that the examiner turned the tables in an instant, but that Lu's reaction was also fast when she used lightning power to increase her speed. Only 5 seconds remain and the announcer asks if she will hold on until the end. Yao thinks he is pressuring her too much. The two charge at each other. Lu coughs up plasma and the announcer says that the examiner is even faster than she is. Yao is knocked down and lying on the ground is grabbed by the neck. The general lifts her up, choking her, asking if she thinks he cannot deal with long-range attacks. Tabit releases immense power and defeats her. The announcer says it is a shame. Only 1 second was left and reminds everyone that Examiner Tabit is capable of counterattacking even long-range elemental attacks, asking whether anyone will be able to defeat him today. The general raises his leg and tells everyone to watch closely because this is what happens to traitors. Everyone looks on in shock as Tabit is about to crush her head, but someone blocks the blow. It is the protagonist, protecting Yao. The general grits his teeth and Joe keeps holding his foot. Everyone is stunned, and Tabit wonders how that boy got there so fast and why his kick did not break his arm. Yi tells the general to forgive him, but her fight is already over, and the one fighting now is him. Lu is carried away on a stretcher, and the announcer declares that the next candidate is already in the arena, saying that he performed a miracle by reaching the top in the first round and also had an impressive performance in the defense of Narumi City. Tony thinks he does not know how Joe cheated in the last round, but he humiliated him badly and asked the general to help him get revenge, and today he will make Joe suffer the same humiliation in front of the crowd. The announcer explains to the audience that they may not know Joe and the contestants eliminated yesterday were arrested by the examiner and released only shortly before today's competition, and that the recently eliminated contestant, Lu, was Joe's teammate in the rescue mission at the Institute, so this next match will surely be a match of revenge. No one will give up easily. Another competitor will be defeated before the examiner's eyes, and everyone should wait and see. The match begins. The protagonist takes an attacking stance, and the announcer says Joe made the first move and asks what tactic he will use to break through Tabit's defense. The general blocks the strike, and the announcer comments that Yi is not using abilities. He wants to settle this with Tabit in hand-to-hand combat. The two strain against each other, plasma sprays, and the announcer says it was expected. He was hit by the counterattack and asks what he will do now. The general attacks him, saying someone already tried that trick before and all of them failed without exception. But Joe lands a hit, and Tabit asks if he knows why this is useless, explaining that fighting him in close combat means that at the same time Yi causes damage, he also receives the counterattack back. Yi clenches his fist and keeps trying to hit him, and Tabit says he is only hurting himself and asks how he could possibly win. The two exchange fierce blows and plasma sprays, and the announcer says contestant Joe has visibly suffered severe damage and asks how much longer he can endure. They keep exchanging powerful blows, and the announcer says 90 seconds have already passed and Yi still has not fallen, until the general lands a strike that sends him flying, and then Tabit hits him again, causing a massive impact. Eileen asks what he is thinking and why he is fighting the general head-on, and Corey tells her not to worry because it is not over yet. The general stares at Joe and says he admits he has a lot of willpower, but that is not enough to defeat him, and the announcer asks if this is the end for the contestant. Then, a hand moves. Tabit notices, and Yi rises to his feet, breathing heavily, and the general wonders how he is still able to stand. Joe begins recovering quickly from the damage, and Tabit wonders how his recovery can be that strong. Yi notices something while watching the general and says that although Tabit has an incredibly troublesome counterattack ability, his body can still be injured, and that if it were not for the time limit, he would beat him until he could no longer get up. The announcer says that was the contestant's strategy: rely on his superhuman recovery and fight the examiner to the end. The examiner's full power attack failed to bring him down, and the balance of victory is now tipping toward the contestant. The general smiles and begins releasing a surreal energy. The protagonist stares at him as Tabit summons Soul Beast Resonance. The general's veins throb, and a huge beast is invoked, the infernal steppe wolf, with absurd power. Joe keeps staring at him, and the announcer says it seems the examiner has been cornered by the contestant. As everyone knows, the general has strength equivalent to that of a squad captain, and this is the first time he has released Soul Beast Resonance in public. The attack is so strong that part of the stands is hit, and Corey says that compared to Tabit, the resonance Lou forced out was just decoration. And Eileen says that thinking an examiner would stoop to using Soul Beast Resonance against a candidate is simply too much. And Virion agrees, saying he tolerated double standards with the previous contestants, and could claim that the cruelty toward Lou was personal resentment. But now Rhodes should be asked whether he still has any shame. In the arena, the general says he has seen many like Yi become awakened and grow arrogant without knowing their own limits, and states that only by mastering the power of the monsters contained in their weapons is someone qualified to face the apocalypse. The protagonist thinks the air around him seems to have solidified from the power the general is releasing. Even breathing becomes difficult. It is just like that person on the city wall that day. Joe smiles and thinks that he will finally experience the so-called power of the strong. The beast opens its mouth, about to devour him, and a huge impact erupts. The smoke clears, and Yi manages to dodge, thinking that the general is unbelievably fast. The system notifies that kinetic vision has been activated. The beast charges again, and the protagonist runs, and the general says that his power comes from the infernal steppe wolf, that once it locks onto its prey, it hunts it to the death. Joe keeps running until he stops and punches the beast, shattering it into pieces, and thinks that there is a chance. Several attacks rush toward him and hit him. It was the other wolf that launched the attacks. The pressure keeps rising, and the protagonist continues running, thinking that creature does not fear being hit and that the arena is far too small. No matter how he dodges, he will be caught sooner or later. Then Joe looks to the side and realizes that Tabit switched to long-range attacks, and that maybe the main body is the weak point. The general watches him, notices that Yi is getting close, and attacks first. Yi wonders if the counterattack is even stronger than his own strike, and Tabit drives a blade through his body. The protagonist coughs up plasma and is thrown far away. The general says he is just like all the other idiots who thought they could use simple tricks against him, and adds that after activating resonance, his power increased tenfold, and now he can return attacks with twice the force. The wolves begin biting Joe, and Tabit says his recovery ability is a nuisance. But even though it is disgraceful for an examiner to use lethal force against a candidate, with the next blow he will end his life. Yi feels extreme pain, and Tony cheers in delight, saying he is dead meat. Ji covers his face with his hand, and Eileen screams in despair. The general's power rises even more, an extremely bright light bursts out, and a massive explosion follows. The announcer is shocked and says that a terrifying sound echoed out. Even the audience is frightened, and the vice captain widens her eyes, overwhelmed by fear and worry. The ground is cut apart by the impact, and the warrior remains confident. The announcer says that it is a truly devastating attack. The contestant is Joe, and his condition is unknown. The protagonist is lying on the ground, badly injured. Eileen says that this no longer looks like a simple selection game, but an intentional elimination. Zhang agrees and says that they cannot act so recklessly, demanding a replacement. Everyone looks over in surprise. The warrior walks across the arena with a serious expression. Then someone punches the ground. The warrior stops walking, and Eileen smiles. The announcer is surprised and says that contestant Joe endured instructor Tabitha's harshest test, and that he can still fight. Yi stares at him, and the warrior asks how that is possible. The crowd shouts, and the protagonist asks why everyone is so surprised, and whether they were really so sure that he did not have the power to defeat him. A sphere on his arm begins to move, becoming even stronger. In the VIP seating area, Rhodes remains with his head lowered, silent. Someone approaches and comments that allowing an instructor to be lenient with a competitor, or even mistreat him in front of so many people, is shameful. Corey says they have no shame at all. Rose asks about shame and says that the only thing that matters is victory or defeat. As long as someone can win, he asks what shame really means. At that moment, both of them look over in surprise when they see the arena. The protagonist has enormous wings and is flying, and all of his wounds have been healed. Ze, excited in the stands, asks when his brother learned that move. Someone approaches and says it happened when he saved him in the laboratory basement, after obtaining the Goliath crystal. It was Zhang Yi who also thinks that he would not reveal the secret of being able to completely transform into a monster. That is why, after witnessing the power of Soul Beast Resonance, he must have thought of disguising himself that way to use the ability. Without a doubt, it was a good method. The protagonist says that, although the time has run out, he still has not defeated him himself. Because of that, he wants to keep fighting him and asks if the warrior dares to accept the challenge. The warrior bursts out laughing and says he has never seen anyone use a disposable monster from an E-rank abyss, like a white-tailed ptarmigan, as the spiritual beast of their own weapon. Then he asks if Joe is saying that he can only release the power of such a low-level monster. The warrior calls out to the boy and says that now there are no more damn rules, because this will be a battle until one of them is finished. A whirlwind is launched toward Joe, but Yi dodges by flying and charges at his opponent, launching his strike before pulling away. The announcer says he did not expect the contestant Soul Beast Resonance to have a flight ability, allowing him to rise into the sky like that. The people in the stands say that he can fly and ask how anyone is supposed to fight that now. Tony asks why everyone is panicking and says that flying monsters are rare in the abyss, but simply being able to fly will not be enough for him to defeat his uncle. The warrior in the stands asks if he is trying to run away. The protagonist, still flying, simply smiles and releases the two crossbows he had in his hands. The crossbows charge toward Tony and his partner, causing an explosion and injuring them both. Eileen gets excited when she sees that. Joe apologizes and says his hand slipped. Tony only wants his uncle to eliminate the protagonist. Then someone appears with a crossbow in hand. It is the warrior, advancing from behind. He notices that the protagonist's back is full of holes and attacks from behind. Yi turns around and says he is too slow. The protagonist manages to block in time with his wings, and the Major General asks why he keeps interfering with the army's plans. He says that, for years, they have been planning to merge the City Defense Army and the Extermination Squad, two violent and powerful organizations, using the selection process as an opportunity to do it without shedding blood. As long as the plan succeeds, he can sacrifice his reputation and dignity in front of so many people from Minghai City. Otherwise, sooner or later, the two sides will destroy the city. Joe realizes something and asks what that has to do with him, saying that he simply cannot stand the situation and that they only need to replace the competition instructor with someone fair and impartial. Tabit realizes something, releases his power, and asks what kind of person he is. Yi's feet become trapped, and the Major General pulls him with his thread, dragging him away. Then the protagonist's body is also restrained. Joe drops to one knee, trying to resist. The pressure becomes more and more intense. Tabit destroys his crossbow and summons a powerful weapon. The announcer says that in the blink of an eye, he unleashed an even more powerful finishing blow than the previous one. Joe raises one finger and, even while trapped, says that now he can defeat him using only one finger. Tabit does not understand and charges forward, saying that he is still acting tough even with the finish so close. Tabit launches the attack, but it only cuts off a few pieces of his wing. The protagonist smiles and counterattacks. Eileen says that he used an attack that was far too powerful and that, if it went wrong, everything would end for him right there. Both opponents smile and attack together. Tabit's crossbow is struck, causing an explosion. The pressure is so strong that even the announcer is pushed backward. Eileen places her hand over her face. Then everything begins to calm down. The smoke dissipates, and Joe is still standing, with some injuries, just like Tabit. The people in the stands watch everything closely. Tabit says he finally understands because the damage returned. The protagonist says that he noticed it from the very beginning during their close combat. If Tabit could not return the attack accumulated in his body to the opponent in time, then the damage would appear on his own body. Right after that, Tabit falls to the ground, defeated. The announcer watches carefully and says that Instructor Tabit, known as the Eliminating God of 100 Ghosts, has lost the fight. The audience members personally witnessed that legendary battle where a participant in the selection competition defeated an instructor, and now the winner of that match would be announced. Joe raises his hand and the announcer finishes the sentence by saying that the winner is him. The people in the stands celebrate and shout his name. Joe's victory reignites the anger and dissatisfaction that had been suppressed for a long time throughout the entire audience. Amid the applause, Tabit's qualification as an instructor is revoked. Inside the exit passage, the protagonist touches his wound, and the system notifies him that an injury has been detected and that his recovery rate has been reduced by half. He thinks that he could not fully release the monster form fighter state in front of so many spectators. He only managed to learn how to use the crystal to enter resonance, like Lu and Tabit, but the side effects are far too severe, and it seems he will not be able to use it a second time in a short period. Someone approaches, and it is Eileen, who hugs him and says that she really did not expect him to defeat Tabit, congratulating him. Joe does not return the hug and simply thanks her. Eileen stares at him and hits him. He does not understand. Eileen says that while he was fighting Tabit, she was extremely nervous. The protagonist remains silent. Eileen also says that he did not even consider what would happen if that move had not defeated Tabit, asking if everything would not have gone wrong, and when he learned Soul Beast Resonance. She says she has never heard about it and that he even hides his moves from her. Joe replies that he will explain when they get back. Then, someone touches his arm. It is Zhongyi, who asks what he thought and whether the crystal she gave him was good. She moves closer and says in his ear that her brother has even better crystals at home, asking why he does not reconsider marrying someone from the family. Yi is shocked. Eileen pulls him and asks what Zhongyi thinks she's doing. Zhongyi pulls from the other side and tells him to go with her, because they are going to ignore that violent woman. The protagonist thinks that this must be the legendary love triangle. Some people come running over and Joe notices them. When they arrive, they are injured men who tell them to stop fooling around and line up properly. Yi realizes that they are the participants eliminated by Tabit. They all stand in formation before him and thank him for defeating Tabit. Somewhere else, the announcer says that the next stage of the competition will be judged by the captain of the extermination squad. The scores of all participants previously evaluated by Tabit will be reassessed, and those who were eliminated may advance if they pass the reevaluation. Somewhere else, the injured men say that it was thanks to him defeating Tabit that they now have the chance to be evaluated fairly. The protagonist says that this is great. Jia approaches, bringing someone in a wheelchair, and it is Lu Yao, who says that he managed to defeat Tabit before her, but that one day she will take revenge herself. Then blood begins to come out of her nose. Joe holds her. Lu begins to tremble and thanks him, calling him captain. At that moment, more people come running over and point their weapons. They are soldiers along with Tony, who says that Joe did not leave after the timer ended, deliberately provoked and seriously injured an instructor, incited ordinary citizens to be hostile toward the military, and intentionally attacked the stands, causing several injuries. They suspect that he deliberately disrupted the order of the selection contest, taking the opportunity to harm people and say that he must go with them. Some people step in front of the protagonist. They are the injured men who ask what the hell this is and say that if they want to mess with Joe, they will have to ask first whether they agree. Tony asks what they are doing and whether they want to violently resist arrest. The injured men say that they have been fed up with them for a long time and ask if Tony really thinks they are afraid to fight him, making it clear that no one there will back down. Then a voice says that the competition is not over yet. It was Corey, who also asks what everyone is doing gathered there. Rhodes says that it is almost his turn to present and that he is still there causing trouble with those people, so he orders everyone to get lost. Tony looks frightened, agrees, and leaves. Corey says that from the moment Joe defeated Tabit, he became the most anticipated rising star in Minghai City. Whether he likes it or not, from now on, good and bad things will begin to appear before him, so he needs to be careful. The protagonist says nothing. At night, in the best luxury restaurant in the city, Joe asks if the place is full that day and the secretary tells him to come back another time. Yi comments that it seems they will have to find somewhere else. Then, someone calls out to him and says that he reserved the Cloud Pavilion that day. It was Hao Yu saying that he only wanted to offer a simple meal to a few people. The protagonist remains silent. Later, in the Cloud Pavilion, Joe is sitting with his team. Eileen wonders if the Bai family is not allied with the military and tries to understand what exactly Hao Yu wants. Hao Yu claps his hands, and the waiters approach with the banquet. The waiter opens the first dish, and Hao Yu says that it is the hand of a B-class abyssal lord, the bear god Atherhan. The protagonist is confused and observes the spine of the fierce beast Sculpturus, a rare monster from an A-class abyss, as well as the wings of a Bazk dragonkin. Hao Yu says that he will not find anything more complete than that in all of Minghai City. Eileen thinks that those are the remains of extremely rare monsters, things she would not be able to find even if she wanted to buy them. The cockroach is summoned and says that it has detected multiple rare characteristics, suggesting that he eat everything quickly. Hao Yu watches and says that he wants to be Yi's friend. He heard that the protagonist has a special interest in collecting the remains of various monsters, so he prepared a small gift for him. The protagonist wonders how Hao Yu knew that. Jay asks if he is trying to threaten his brother. Hao Yu tells him not to be so tense because there is nothing in Minghai City that he does not know. He says that he was not collecting information specifically about Joe, it is simply part of his work. Hao Yu says that he sincerely regards the protagonist as a friend and asks if he would be willing to be friends with the Bai family. Then someone approaches and says that this meat is bait from a corrupted world and that only by offering the body to sacred energy can the impurity be removed and the spirits purified. She asks whether it will be possible to build a future for all living beings and says that this is an unholy place. Beside the woman, there is a creature. The woman talks about the impurity that does not come near her body and closes her eyes. Haoyu thinks that this crazy woman is showing off again while the protagonist does not understand. The woman reaches out, touches his face, and asks if he heard her thoughts. Eileen widens her eyes and Joe does not understand why she called him the Holy Son. Eileen, irritated, pulls her partner and asks how much longer that woman intends to hug him. The woman says that in the prophecies of the Holy Church there will be a Holy Son, a bearer of sacred energy who will be the Savior and lead them out of that world full of suffering. She also says that the Holy Son and the Holy Maiden will be in perfect harmony, and she is certain that he is the Holy Son they have waited for so many years. She calls him to return to her embrace, saying that tens of millions of believers in that world will be under his command. Eileen wonders if, in order to win him over, they went so far as to fabricate a prophecy and whether they really want to turn him into the leader of the church. Then another person arrives and asks if the young people like a place like that. The Holy Maiden and Haoyu do not seem pleased to see him. It was Rhodes, who says that he does not like beating around the bush, so he will be direct. He says that he greatly admires talented young people like Joe and asks if he is interested in joining the city defense force. The protagonist does not understand. When a soldier is about to pull something out, Rhodes signals with his hand. The soldier shows an image of Tabit holding an axe over another person, and Rhodes says that Tabit made the heroes who defended the city sleep out in the open, so he can no longer be saved. As an examiner in the selection process, Tabit openly committed irregularities, training new recruits by making them eliminate one another. Rhodes says that he is a despicable person. Then he says that all Joe has to do is press that button for Tabit to lose his life, and that now Tabit's life is in Joe's hands. Eileen wonders if the military is really willing to abandon General Tabit. Joe stares at him, tosses the control back to Rhodes, and says that he has no inclination to eliminate anyone. While Eileen wonders if Rhodes is really trying to persuade him, she thinks that those are the three major families, and that she cannot let her partner offend all of them for selfish reasons, as long as he does not choose the army. The protagonist smiles, and Rhodes thinks that this is exactly right, because an intelligent person should know what to choose. Then Rhodes looks surprised. Joe makes a gesture with his hand, thanks everyone for having such a positive opinion of him, but says that he knows he is not the genius they imagine. Before arriving in Minghai City, he encountered a monster and was almost eliminated in the middle of the wilderness. Even now, to this day, the memory of that wide-open mouth still terrifies him. Because of that, he says that he is not worthy of their generosity. The three families fall silent. Yi looks back and Eileen is smiling beside Jay and the doctor. The protagonist smiles back and tells them to go eat at a food stall. A car arrives. Rhodes says that since he has no connection to any of the families, they will proceed with the plan the three families had already agreed on, eliminating him in the third round. Haoyu says that it is a pity, and the Holy Maiden says may God allow him to rest in peace. Time moves forward to the first day of the third test of the selection contest, held in the Triennial Hall. At the Abyssal Portal, Corey and Eileen are present, and in front of them there is a plant. Someone asks if she is the examiner for the final round. Captain Haley from the 10th Squad approaches and says that first, she congratulates everyone for making it this far. After the first two rounds, the current rankings are revealed. Everyone looks at the scoreboard. Joe has 100 points in the first round and 100 points in the second, totaling 200 points. Tony has 49 points in the first round and 95 in the second, totaling 144 points. Haoyu scored 38 points in the first round and 90 in the second, totaling 128 points. Karen Usher scored 35 points in the first round and 92 in the second, totaling 127 points. Zhu has 50 points in the first round and 71 in the second, totaling 121 points. Lu scored 21 points in the first round and 98 in the second, totaling 119 points. Haley says that participant Yi currently has a lead of 56 points, but that in the third round there is still a possibility that he can be surpassed. Then she presents the rules of the third round. The test will take place in a C-class abyss on Chiang Mountain. Haley also explains that in this round they will undergo a 240-hour survival test on Chiang Mountain and must hunt the monsters inside that abyss. Chiang Mountain has 4 levels of monsters: Foot Soldier, Knight, Guard, and Leader, corresponding to 1 point, 10 points, 50 points, and 100 points, respectively. During those 10 days, the total score will be based on the monsters eliminated, added to the points from the previous rounds. The top 10 participants will be promoted to the Extermination Squad. Considering the average skill level of the participants, even leader-level monsters can be defeated with good cooperation. Teams of up to 3 people are allowed. Members cannot attack one another and must split the points of defeated monsters equally. Forming a team can increase the chances of survival in the abyss, but it also means that the relative rankings may not change, so they need to choose their companions carefully. Haley takes the lollipop out of her mouth and tosses it to the plant, saying that the members of the Extermination Squad and the 10th Squad will do everything they can to ensure their safety in the abyss. But if they cannot rescue someone in time, they will have to use the remaining corpses as food for those adorable little creatures. The people become distressed. Haley says that after the 30-minute preparation period, the competition will officially begin, and that is all. People approach the protagonist, wanting him to take them along and accept all of them onto his team, but Joe says no. The boys become indignant. Yi says that he cannot form a team with them and that they should believe in themselves, because the farther away he is from them when the competition begins, the better it will be. One of them says that there are many of them there and that they can help him, and then they begin arguing among themselves. Ji smiles, but the protagonist notices something. He's standing right in front of the big guys. Ji looks back, steps away from them, and asks if she also has a bad feeling. Lu replies that it is not just a feeling, it is a certainty. The military is determined to secure that year's champion, and if they manage to get rid of Joe, Tony will become the champion. The people begin forming teams. Lu also says that besides that, in the last round, they publicly embarrassed the military, and from what she understands about them, they definitely will not let that go unpunished. Joe says that after rejecting those 3 families that day, he began staying on guard against surprise attacks, and since they made no move outside the arena, the only remaining possibility is that they will try to eliminate him during the final test. Zoe asks what they should do then and says that more than half of the participants in the final round belong to the 3 major families, asking if only the 3 of them will have to face everyone else. Yi tells him not to worry because his plan is until someone approaches, calling out to him. It is Hao Yu who says that in the end, they really did form a team of 3 people exactly as expected. However, there are more than 2 people there capable of releasing the power of Soul Beast resonance, so it is not just the 2 of them. The 3 families are already prepared to join forces against them, and he will not win. Hao Yu says that he truly wants to be his friend and that as long as he withdraws his request now, the promise he made earlier will still stand. The protagonist thanks him for his kindness, but says that he heard there has never been a selection competition champion who placed first in all 3 rounds, and that he still wants to be the first. Someone moves quickly and Joe realizes that this person's power is actually on the same level as Tabit's. The warrior asks if he does not know that the young master resisted family pressure and says that he is giving him one last chance, calling him someone who does not know what is good for him. Hao Yu tells them not to fight there, and says that since he wants to walk down a dead-end path, all that is left is to wish him good luck. Yi looks confident. The preparation period ends. All participants must check whether their monitoring bracelets are working properly and then enter the arena according to their team's overall ranking. The selection competition, 3rd stage evaluation, officially begins. The protagonist enters with his team until someone calls out to him. It is Tony, who says that he is finished for sure. Joe says that they are now the target of public criticism, and that after they enter, they must act according to the plan. First, finding a place to hide. That is a huge mountain, so it will not be that easy to find them. In the Chiang Mountain Abyss, the people enter. Hao Yu, Tony, and the Holy Maiden enter together. Tony orders his men to hurry and asks if everyone is there. He says that Joe is a difficult person to read and that everyone must do their best in that operation. The Holy Maiden says that no one can hold back, and that the result of the dispute between the 3 families will be discussed after they defeat Joe. Before that, no one has permission to steal monster points, and everyone must go look for him. The men say that they are searching for tracks. Someone takes off his hood, keeping his ears alert until he falls to the ground, and Hao Yu orders everyone to spread out. The big man tells them to track him through the blood, because the target cannot hide. Tony thinks that, with the tracking techniques of the 3 families, they will find Joe soon. Then, a guard notices something and says that he found him. Tony asks where he is, and the guard replies that he seems to be nearby. Tony is surprised to hear that. Someone calls out to them. Tony turns around and the protagonist, sitting on top of a tree, calls them all idiots and asks if they are looking for him. Hao Yu and the Holy Maiden become alert. Tony thinks that he did not even hide and wonders how he still dares to provoke them. Tony orders them to bring him down. The people charge together toward Joe, and Yi smiles. A huge explosion occurs. Lu and Zhe notice it and become worried, thinking that the plan has begun. A short time earlier, when they entered the dungeon, the protagonist said that they would probably try to attack them directly inside the abyss. The 2 of them should take different paths, while he would stay there to stop them. Jay asks if he can go alone. Joe tells him to stop talking and just listen to him, because with the number of people equivalent to the 3 families, there is no difference between being 3 or just 1. While he distracts them, the 2 of them must find a way to gain points with the others. In the present, a bird falls to the ground and the people watch. Zhe says that he did not expect his brother to sacrifice his own score, because he will also have to face the three great families until the very end, giving them a chance to compete for the championship. Then he says that he will follow his brother for the rest of his life. The boys begin to cry and say that their brother is truly righteous, because before entering, they thought they had no chance of making it into the top 10. Ji tells everyone to work hard, eliminate more monsters, and gain more points, so they do not disappoint his brother's good intentions. The pressure increases. The monkey opens its huge mouth and screams after being attacked by Lu until it is finished off. The girls say that this is how points are earned. Yao keeps thinking about Zhou and wonders how many times he has already helped her, whether he really has feelings for her, whether he, Vice Captain Eileen, and the Zhang family sister do not have a somewhat ambiguous relationship with one another, and whether he wants her to be his secret lover. She also wonders how she could repay such a great favor. The girls say that they owe Yi a favor and have not even spoken to him, so it seems the only way to repay him would be by offering themselves, but they do not know if he has a girlfriend. Lu realizes what they are saying and asks what the two of them are doing, telling them to focus on the fight. The protagonist is flying, and the men continue chasing after him. Tony says that the power of the spiritual beast resonance will eventually run out and orders everyone to keep chasing him. The men say that Lu and Zhang's points have already surpassed theirs. Tony tells them not to worry so much, because as long as Zhou is neutralized, there will be enough time to deal with the others. While flying, Yi wonders if they really think he is only bait to buy time. The truth is, he is not. He thinks that bringing the two of them along would not be as flexible as acting alone, and that way, there would be no way to execute the next plan. The protagonist observes a monkey and thinks that perhaps they do not know that he can hide among a group of monsters. Zhou flies quickly, leaps down to the ground, and hides among the beasts. Meanwhile, the men run quickly and shout to the boss that those are thorn camels. They say that Zhou wants to lead them into that group. Tony asks what they are afraid of and says that they outnumber them. Yi transforms into a monster and hides among the creatures. The men observe the thorn camels and ask if he is still trying to hide. Tony orders them to search and find him quickly. The men begin searching and say that they did not see him. Meanwhile, the protagonist remains hidden and thinks that he will liven things up a little. Zhou squeezes a camel, making it open its huge mouth. Soon after, all the others also open their huge mouths and run after them. The men run away, saying that the camels have been startled. Tony orders them to eliminate all of them to score some points. Then some monsters appear behind them, and Tony realizes that birds and monkeys are charging together. The monsters surround them, all heading in their direction. Tony orders them to eliminate them all, saying that they will also score some points from this. Tony eliminates a monkey with a single blow and says that they need to end the battle quickly because they cannot let Zhou get too far away. Later, still in the same location, Tony asks if they lost sight of Zhou, and the Holy Maiden replies that they did not, because he is still around there. Then one of the men looks at the watch on his wrist and realizes that he has not scored any points. Tony and all the others also realize that they are still at 0 and do not understand. Meanwhile, the protagonist is hidden, camouflaged in a tree. The system notifies him that the camouflage trait has been activated, originating from the common mutant chameleon found in forests, and that after use, it allows a person to blend into the surrounding environment. Zhou thinks that the rules state that only the person who eliminates the monsters earns points, so as long as he delivers the final blow, all the points will be his. He starts biting all the dying monsters until he finishes them off, and Yi, excited, thinks that he received a lot of free points and thanks them for it. Hao Yu uses Feather Arrow and says that it is Zhou. Tony becomes furious and says that Zhou tricked him again. The protagonist lifts a giant rock and thinks that this is only the beginning, because this is where the real cheating begins. The water rises, and everyone is surprised. The surface begins to bubble, and something comes out of it. It is a giant snake. Everyone is shocked, and Hao Yu asks if that is the Lake King. Tony looks frightened. The giant snake is Gu Yasa, the king of Mirror Lake, a boss-level monster, and it asks who disturbed its sleep. The men become terrified when they see it. Tony orders everyone to prepare for battle. Hao Yu says that Zhou deliberately provoked it, so the creature would attack them, and asks if they should retreat first. Tony asks why they would retreat and says that everyone there is an elite from their respective families. It is only a boss-level monster, so he asks what they should be afraid of. Zhou, on top of the tree, tells them not to be afraid and to just fight, asking how else he is supposed to steal points from them if they run away. The snake opens its huge mouth, and Tony orders them to form ranks. The men, holding crystals in their hands, create a barrier and block the snake's strike. The protagonist smiles and asks if everyone made it out unharmed. Returning to the abyss, the people move quickly, advance, and attack the snake. Then Zhou notices something and remembers Hao Yu saying that the competitors capable of releasing Soul Beast Resonance were not just the two of them. In the present, Yi thinks that even the Bai family's lackeys have mastered Soul Beast Resonance. The cockroach tells him to look more carefully. The protagonist activates his ability and observes everything more closely. The men have monster arms, and Joe wonders if those limbs were torn from monsters and directly grafted onto humans. The Holy Maiden, with her two big men beside her, orders them to advance, and the two immediately move into attack position. The cards begin to burn, and they transform into turtles as the blood pours out and their bodies become even stronger. The protagonist, watching everything, asks what that is. The two turtles charge toward the snake, block the attack with their shells, and begin biting the serpent's skin. The snake screams loudly as it is bitten. The people get chills and ask what is happening. The announcer tells them not to be alarmed because those are awakened individuals from the Church of Abilities who activate their inner power through prayer. Although they look strange, that is their normal state during battle. Blood spreads across the field, and after an intense battle, the snake is defeated. Tony orders them to finish it off, but Joe moves quickly, thinking that this is the moment. Yi advances from behind him. Tony notices, smiles, and thinks that Joe took the bait because he knew Joe was waiting for that chance to land the final blow. The protagonist notices something and thinks that it is ice mist, wondering if that is an ice prison formed in an instant. Yu, the Holy Maiden, and Tony advance together, taking advantage of Joe being trapped in the ice. The announcer says that it is a brilliant plan because competitor Tony used the Lake King as bait and finally captured participant Joe. Now it is 1 against 3, and he wonders if Joe will be forced to face all 3 of them at the same time. Yi remains trapped, and Tony asks where he thinks he is going to run. The protagonist smiles, moves his finger, controls the weapons, and hits the snake, delivering the final blow. Tony looks surprised and says that it was him again, asking where he is. Joe manages to get out of the ice and says that the snake was already on its last breath, because if he had been attacked directly, it would not have been possible to capture him. Tony wonders why he ran to the monster's side. The system notifies him of the cockroach form, and Yi thanks it for the hard work, accepting those 100 points. Tony wonders if they cannot even catch up to him. The announcer says that this was an unexpected reversal because competitor Joe once again deceived the other teams and secured the 100 points for defeating the King of Mirror Lake. Somewhere deep in the abyss, Eileen watches everything from the cliff with the soldiers. The announcer repeats that it was an unexpected reversal, and Eileen says that competitor Joe turned the participants from the 3 major families who came to surround him into workers for him, and that it is perfect. She thinks that Yi's attitude seems quite unpleasant, so Tony and the others must be furious right now. The protagonist stands before them while the men breathe heavily. Yu realizes something and thinks no, continuing to chase Joe like this is a waste of time. If they can convince Tony to stop and abandon the attack against Yi, perhaps they can still build a relationship with him later. He says that if this continues, the gap in points will only grow larger and asks what they think about each of them, leaving one team behind to disturb Yi while the 3 of them go recover points first. The protagonist moves quickly, climbs up a tree, and says that the break is over, so it is time to get back to work. Then something approaches. It is another monster. They notice it, and the cockroach says that it lured the monster there. It is a Hasi bear knight, a dangerous boss-level creature. Tony says no. The bear opens its huge mouth, and Joe smiles. Later, 2 days have passed since the start of the competition. Yi is fighting a stone monster and lures it toward his enemies, saying that he will leave it to them. At Tony's team camp, something appears. It is a horned beast. Tony becomes irritated because he cannot even sleep in peace. Meanwhile, the protagonist watches from afar. Back in the present, Tony looks at the ranking on his watch and realizes that he is in 4th place. Extremely irritated, he thinks that Joe clearly has very powerful abilities and wonders why he does not simply lure a horde of monsters over to finish everyone off. He thinks that if everyone were eliminated, Joe could easily win the competition and take 1st place without needing to do anything so complicated. Joe's current behavior is practically special training. Then a young man says that he did it and that now he can also release Soul Beast Resonance. His partner tells him to get out of the way because the stone monster is about to hit him. Tony thinks that this is nonsense. The young man is not eliminated and widens his eyes when he realizes that the protagonist saved him. The young man thanks him. Joe sets him down on the ground and says that getting distracted during battle is very dangerous. The young man is impressed because even though Joe is an enemy, he is still a good person. Tony becomes very irritated and asks if he is trying to humiliate them. Yi tells him not to misunderstand. The protagonist points his finger and says that he is not their enemy because their true enemies are only the monsters that destroyed the human world. Tony is surprised. Stones are launched and the stone monster begins to fall apart. The young man, very excited, says that he eliminated the monster and earned points. Tony realizes that Joe is no longer killing the enemies himself. Joe says that those who want to eliminate monsters and accumulate points should follow him. The men look at one another and begin following him. Yi leads the competitors from the 3 families into battles against monsters in the valley, the forest, and near the lake. Tony thinks that, although no one admits it, The plan to jointly surround Joe had already failed the moment the stone golem satyr fell. After that, Joe only eliminated monsters personally when he needed to save other people, practically handing almost all the points over to the others. Tony even suspects that Joe already knows the special rule of that selection round, which will not be announced in advance. Any competitor who reaches 100 points in that competition will end up entering the extermination squad. And Joe is willing to help everyone who wants to join the squad, everyone who is at war against the monsters. The tension dissipates and the competition, which was supposed to be a fierce battle until the end, turns into large-scale practical training. Whether they are competitors from the 3 major families or competitors close to the extermination squad, everyone begins to unite and fight the monsters there. People with different points of view, under his leadership, remain on the same front line. Tony wonders if Joe really is the unstable troublemaker his father talked about. At the military camp, Tony keeps his head lowered and wonders how it is possible that, compared to Joe, he himself seems like a villain. A young man says that Joe will not let people be finished off by monsters, so they can use the minimum limit and prepare bait with explosives. When Joe comes to save them, he will die along with him. Tony thinks that this really does sound like something a villain would do. The young man says that this is the last way to get rid of him, because otherwise, Yi will win. Tony remembers when he was little, 5 years old, and wanted to be the great hero who would save the world, someone even stronger than his father. His father, Rhodes, when he was young, and his mother, Sheena Albee, appear in that memory. His mother says that, for that, he would have to grow up quickly. Tony thinks that he also wanted to save the world. Sheena loses her life, and Tony, still a child, cries a lot at her funeral. People commented that the extermination squad she had joined and the Bai family were in conflict for some reason. All coordination had disappeared, and the entire squad was wiped out by the Abyss Lord. Tony thinks that his mother's death made his father realize that if the fragmented forces of Minghai City did not unite, humanity's precious combat power would continue being sacrificed in internal conflicts. That was when Rhodes said that the best moment had arrived. There was a possibility of bringing down both the families and the extermination squad. He would prepare the strongest team for Tony, and in that year's selection competition, Tony had to win the championship. Tony thinks that, regardless of the means, they will gather humanity's power into their own hands. That is his father's choice, and he also agrees with that path. In the present, the men say that they did not even have time to react. They thought they would be finished off by the stone monster, but when they opened their eyes again, Joe had already carried them away and flown off. Tony wonders if that path is really the only way. A soldier says that he knows anyone who uses such dishonest and harmful tricks will be cursed until the end. So Tony does not need to get involved. He will arrange everything, and afterward he can say that he did it on his own without Tony knowing anything. Tony says no. To him, there is only the principle that superiors take responsibility, and there is no rule saying that subordinates must be held responsible alone. He orders them to follow the plan, because he absolutely cannot lose that competition. The next day, Tony releases his ice power against the monsters. The men also advance, fighting the beasts. The soldier says that the squad is ready and that they are going to do it. He gets into position. Tony remains silent and the soldier calls out to him. Tony thinks that a single word is enough to eliminate Joe, his greatest threat, and wonders why he cannot do it. The night before, the soldier says that after interacting with the monster, his partner must act as if he is about to be devoured, because Joe will certainly come to save him. The ultra-compact dirty bomb, secretly developed by Datu the Eliminator, was brought especially to deal with Joe, and when he gets close, it must be detonated. The organization put a lot of effort into training them, so they must not disappoint it. The partner says that the mission will be completed. The soldier asks if the young master would also like to say a few words. Tony asks what else there is to say, since everything has already been planned. He thinks that his father's arrangement is very good and asks why they still bother asking for instructions, as if this were something real. Then he says that he is going out to get some fresh air and orders them not to follow him. Somewhere else, Tony thinks that to get rid of Yi, he would even be capable of using the lives of his own people as bait. Then he hears something. A voice asks what Yi is thinking and says that he is selecting people from the 3 major families so they can accumulate points. Tony listens, and the protagonist asks what the point is of continuing to fight in that cycle. He asks if they have not seen it over the past 2 days and says that they clearly can cooperate because the monsters are their common enemies. Joe notices his own hand trembling and says that it is hot. After hearing everything, Tony wonders if they really can only unite humanity by eliminating those who refuse to conform, and whether Yi really is the terrorist they said needed to be eliminated. In the present, the soldier orders his partner to act quickly. Then, the young man runs toward the monster with bombs in his bag. Tony grits his teeth and orders him to come back. The protagonist looks over and sees the soldier on the ground asking for help, while the monster is about to reach him. Joe grabs the soldier by the bag and the soldier smiles. His captain says that now is the time because this will be the first credit for defeating him. Yi notices something. A light is emitted, and the captain wonders if that is not the bomb's explosion. Lights appear around the protagonist and the soldier is dropped from above. Joe wonders what is happening. The beast notices him and charges directly at him. Je becomes worried and Lu asks if the monsters have gone crazy. The captain asks what is happening and Tony asks if he is really undergoing a tribulation there. The monsters run, and all the monsters in the abyss begin gathering toward the protagonist. The people in the audience say that the monsters are going mad and that everything has turned into total chaos. The announcer says that everyone should know that awakened humans use strange abilities, dependent on crystals and monster bodies, but to the abyss world, where monsters live, this is like an invading foreign body. According to the church, the abyss world has an existence similar to its own will, called the Supreme God, which, when it senses that a powerful human is about to emerge, tries to eliminate him. The lightning that fell struck participant Joe directly, and this is the most iconic attack. An awakened one capable of surviving the Supreme God's attack will take their strength to a new level, and this is what awakened ones call undergoing tribulations. However, no one has ever undergone tribulations inside the abyss. This is a serious accident, and the competition must be stopped immediately. People run, Rhodes orders them to open the abyss portal, and an employee says there is bad news. They cannot enter now. Inside the abyss, Joe thinks that, for some reason, those monsters are only attacking him. There are too many monsters, so he needs to enter his fighter form to face them. But if he transforms into a monster there, his secret will be revealed. The monsters are all staring at him. The soldier runs in that direction and says that this really is a gift from the heavens. Yi is finished for sure, and they do not even need to do it. Then he starts looking for the young master. The protagonist stands before the monsters. An ice barrier is released by Tony to protect him, and Tony thinks that if the abyss world also considers Joe a threat that must be eliminated, then he absolutely cannot let that happen. He orders Joe to get up now. Yi is surprised and begins to float on his own, being struck by lightning again. The protagonist begins screaming intensely. Je says that the monsters are getting closer and that they need to get him out of there. Tony says not to touch him. An awakened one going through tribulations needs to pass 3 tests: enduring the attack of heavenly lightning, dealing with the monster tide caused by the will of the abyss, and finally fighting the monsters they have already defeated inside the spiritual domain. An awakened one, undergoing abyss tribulations, often loses their life in a terrible way. Remaining in the real world during the tribulation avoids the encounter with the monster tide. Installing lightning protection equipment nearby can solve the problem of the heavenly lightning, and the awakened one only needs to defeat the illusion monsters inside the spiritual domain to pass the tribulation successfully. But it seems that Joe has no idea what a tribulation is, and only then did they enter the abyss. Interrupting the tribulation now would only bring negative consequences, and he could lose his life on the spot. Lu asks what they should do now, and Tony replies that before he wakes up, they need to block those monsters. Each person guards one side. The monsters let out roars, and Tony begins eliminating them together with Lu and Je, causing a huge impact. Some men advance and say that they were saved by Yi, asking how they could abandon him and run away just to save their own lives. A monster reaches out and crushes one of them, but they keep fighting. Tony watches those people and realizes that everyone is risking their lives to save Joe. Then a monster approaches from behind. Tony turns quickly, but the creature manages to grab him. Tony tries to break free. On the cliff, the soldiers watch and say that another wave is on the way and that they are about to be overwhelmed. The captain says that everyone saw with their own eyes what Joe did for them over the past few days, and that now that he is in trouble, they should help him. One of them says that Yi is the #1 enemy and asks if they still want to save him. Since the young master is not there, they should listen to him now and retreat because that is an order. But the soldiers do not listen and move quickly. Meanwhile, Tony tries to break free. A monster approaches the protagonist, but Tony manages to freeze it even while restrained, and the creature falls. The beast holding Tony begins slamming him against the ground. Tony spits blood and, as he falls, notices another monster approaching Joe. He shouts no, thinking that it is already too late, but a soldier steps in front and blocks the attack. It is Luo Wei, a sergeant of the City Defense Army. Tony is surprised to see him, and the other soldiers also approach, creating a barrier to protect Tony and Joe. Tony does not understand, and Luo says that all the brothers came back of their own free will. They will not abandon him, so he should retreat first. And it is not just them. Hao Yu also approaches with his team because they also came back. The Holy Maiden also returns with her turtles, which block the monsters. Lu asks why everyone is there and whether she did not tell them to leave first. The men answer that even members of the 3 major families came back, so how could they simply stand by and watch all of that happen? Everyone is aware of the danger, but Joe has saved them so many times that now it is their turn. Someone approaches Tony and says it is a shame that monster did not stab him all the way through. It is Joe who also asks if he can still hold on, and says that all the tactics Joe practiced with them over the past few days were centered around his army. Tony is the most experienced fighter there, so the command of the battle should be left to him. Tony says that everyone is there and asks if they still trust him. The Holy Maiden, Hao Yu, and Lu nod. Tony is surprised, clenches his fist, and says that the city defense army must hold the front line with him, while the others should take positions according to the defensive formation they practiced. They need to move fast because another wave of monsters is coming. The announcer watches, and a voice on the radio asks if they should cut the signal first, but the announcer says no. On the radio, the voice says that this is already an accident in a live broadcast and that it will look bad if it is shown, but the announcer says this is the first time the activists of Minghai City have put their differences aside and fought together in unity. Not only the audience there, but everyone in Minghai needs to see it. In the abyss, after a difficult battle, Tony, panting, says that the number of monsters is not decreasing and that if they continue like this, they will not last much longer. Joe still has not finished. A very strong light continues surrounding him until the protagonist closes his eyes and, when he opens them, appears somewhere else, asking how he got there and wondering about the sound of war drums. Joe looks ahead and thinks that standing there are the master of Mirror Lake, the giant serpent from the battle against the city wall, horned beastmen, bear knights, and Goliath, all lord-level monsters he has already eliminated, and he wonders how they appeared there. The monsters smile sinisterly. The cockroach says that this is a spiritual domain created by the will of the abyss to eliminate him. The monsters advance, causing massive impacts. The cockroach says that these creatures are very similar to the ones he has encountered before, but the will of the abyss has strengthened them until they are at his current level. Flames are released, and the cockroach tells him not to be careless because inside the spiritual domain, he will suffer direct damage to his spirit, and if he loses his life there, the power of immortality will not be able to save him. A monster charges forward while releasing absurd flames. The protagonist clenches his fist and widens his eyes. The flames dissipate and the monster is struck. The pressure grows stronger and stronger. Joe keeps his fist buried in its stomach, stares at the creature, and throws it away, making it crash into a building. Yi asks if it did not even put in that much effort and is already having trouble standing up. Another beast approaches with a smile while an aura surrounds their bodies, and the protagonist asks if there is no reaction at all to the death of their companions. The cockroach replies that they are only war machines disguised by the will of the abyss, using the forms of monsters he has seen before. They have no emotions, consciousness, or memories, and all their actions have only one goal: to eliminate him. The bear, with its huge mouth, lets out a roar and charges forward. The cockroach says that this is the Bear Knight's signature move, the brutal charge, and that the impact from just one of those monsters would be enough to destroy the city walls. Joe says that this is much better, because if they are too weak, there will be no way to know just how strong he really is now. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.